Hey everybody, I hope you're all having a good day. So as some of you may know, I haven't been able to work on new videos for the last week, mainly because I haven't been able to record or do sound design. Things are getting a bit better, and I'm going to be working on stuff again this week. I'm aiming to get Portal in the Forest done by around the end of the week, and then hopefully Borrasca Part 2 next week. But yeah, I just wanted to hop in here real quick and say that. I hope you all enjoy the video, and I'll be in the comments like I normally am.
On December 19th, 2012, the eastern Pacific Ocean began to glow. We thought it was a freak accident, a trick of wind and atmosphere, of fog and the full moon. We were wrong. I still remember how breathtakingly beautiful it looked, how even my old TV screen couldn't obscure the clarity and purity of that light. You remember this as clearly as I do. You don't know it yet, but you will. This memory is etched deeply into all of us, a permanent stain on the deepest, most immutable level of our subconscious. You weren't supposed to remember, not ever. But trust me, you have to remember it now, because the moon is very angry. There are memories inside every last one of us. The glowing sea is one of them. Just one of 100,000 memories we locked away to save ourselves. Memories we weren't even supposed to know we have. Things you were never meant to remember. But you have to remember them now, because the moon is very angry. Admittedly, the memories are a little different for each of us. It doesn't make sense, does it? After all, just because we were all at the same ball game, or the same Christmas parade, or witnessed the same crime scene, doesn't mean we all remember things the exact same way. We can't. It's not possible. But even though we don't have the exact same memories, we all remember the same thing. We remember that once, and twice, 3 times, and 10 times, and 100 times, and more, so many more, the moon was very angry. This is my memory. An earth-shaking, bone-shattering, cosmos-cracking thrum, and then light, smooth, liquid light bathing the earth in curtains of silver blue, spilling and spreading until darkness ceased to exist, until there was nothing but light, nothing but the moon. Think. Remember the thrum. Remember the way the ground, the earth, reality itself shook until there should have been nothing left. Remember how even though there should have been nothing, there was still you. Remember the light, silver and blue and lovely. Remember how it flooded us and drowned every shadow in its radiance. You can remember if you really try. At first, you might only sense an echo of a dream, a shadow of a memory you don't even know you've forgotten. Maybe you'll have a glimpse, a fraction of a second of the silver light spilling across the ground. Maybe you'll remember a loved one desperately covering your screaming mouth as the light swells. Maybe you'll see a hand, silvered and quick as a startled bird under the ruptured moon reaching for you. Or maybe you'll see eyes, wide, dead, empty eyes reflecting the beautiful silver light. That was the first time the moon was very angry. The second time was different. The first time was instant, but the second time was slow. So slow we blamed it on the faulty equipment or broken instruments for months. It started with the strangest lightning we've ever seen. Beautiful silver lightning, smooth and blade-like, with none of the jagged edges or ozonic burn of normal lightning. Then one night, that lightning spread across the sky, a vast and tattered spider's web knitting itself together as the world watched in awe. It grew and grew and grew, overtaking everything. Our communication systems died, our entire grid fizzled into nothing, and everything went dark. When the world was fully dark, the moon broke apart and grew and spread, a shifting mandala of blinding silver that covered the sky, flooding the earth with hungry light that swallowed the ground, swallowed the darkness, swallowed everything, until nothing remained but the sea of light, and us, only the vast ocean of radiant silver and our screams as the light began to eat us too. There was a third time, and a fourth time, and a fifth time. The sixth time, there was lightning again, but not on Earth. It had learned, you see. The moon always learns from the mistakes. So this time, the lightning came from the moon itself, vast, whip-like arcs of blinding light visible from every corner of the Earth, the aurora borealis woven into ropes that danced and spun across the cratered surface like rabid demons. The lightning blinded those who looked too long and drove the rest of us insane. When the lightning finally broke open and spilled its torrential radiance, drowning the Earth in a pure silver flood, we were calmed. We were happy. A planet of the insane, soothed and quieted by a thing that existed only to swallow us. I don't remember that time very well. In fact, I barely remember it at all. I don't know how we escaped, how we outran the moon that time, only that somehow we did. This will sound insane to you, but it is important, and it is true. There is only one moon. One moon, but many Earths, many planes, an infinity of realities. Think of these realities as threads, an ocean of threads, endless and eternal, spreading in every direction, like a sunset sky with a palette of colors ranging from blinding brilliance to utter darkness. The threads that are the farthest apart are so different from each other that we cannot even comprehend the magnitude of that difference. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that each thread is so similar to each of its neighbors that, except for a handful of the tiniest, most insignificant of details, they're identical. That is how we outrun the moon. By swinging our thread into the nearest neighboring thread and sliding into it, joining it, overtaking it, swallowing it, becoming it. In becoming it, we are able to forget the night the moon was very angry, and we are none the wiser for the change, except, perhaps, for a letter transposed here or there, or a half-remembered product line vanishing into the ether. Maybe a familiar logo inexplicably altered, a believed cartoon missing an article of clothing, or a dignitary dying 20 years after you watched their televised funeral at school. You don't notice these things often. Who has time for such tiny, meaningless differences? But when you do notice, you come dangerously close to remembering a silent ocean of silver light and dead, wide eyes as numerous as the stars. And deep in your heart, you decide to keep forgetting. That is why we outrun the moon, to save ourselves and to forget it. It's what I've dedicated my life to, me and 1,000 others. Building bridges to other threads to save our reality, changing planes of existence the way actors change costumes, clawing desperately at the threads of reality to outrun something that should not be. There's more to it, of course, but it doesn't matter. In the end, all that matters is that outrunning the moon is the most important work in the history of our civilization, maybe even the history of our universe. It is the most important thing anyone has ever done. And we messed up. The moon was angry a 7th time, and an 8th, and a 10th, and a 20th, and a 100th, and a 1,000th, and more. The moon was angry a 7th time, and an 8th, and a 10th, and a 20th, and a 100th, and a 1,000, and more. So many, many more, and we outran them all. So many worlds drowned in light. So many threads overtaken, so many realities swallowed by ours, swallowed by us. Now, something happens when you start combining threads. Any knitter or seamstress can tell you that when you pull threads or twist them together or snake them around each other, they tangle. Once they've tangled long enough and badly enough, they fray, and they break. Another time when the moon was angry, the problem started with geomagnetic storms. Small ones, we thought, barely blips on our radar, but then they kept coming, and they kept growing. Growing and growing and growing and growing. Solar storms, coronal mass ejections of sizes and impacts that, until that point, had only ever been theoretical. Events that wiped out everything we'd ever built, that burned holes the size of countries in our atmosphere, leaving us broken, burned, and dying. We were so relieved when the moon finally came for us. That glorious light, cool silver blue, spilling through the holes in the atmosphere like ghostly waterfalls and flooding the ruined earth like water extinguishing a wildfire. And as soon as the light drowned the world, the moon grew. It grew into something it shouldn't be, something it wasn't, something that was somehow everything, something that was not and had never been our moon, something that was triumphant, something that had won, but something that was still very, very angry. We thought there would be enough threads to last forever, an eternity of realities, an endless supply of worlds just beyond the moon's bleeding light. But we were wrong. We've tangled the threads together for too long now, creating a Gordian knot so ruined it no longer has a beginning or an end. It no longer even remembers what it was like to be threads. Now it only knows what it means to be a knot. It is insanity on an incomprehensible scale, a scale that makes our entire universe barely a cell in comparison. But as any doctor can tell you, it takes just one cell, a single, solitary, disruptive cell, to disease an entire body. And in our panic to outrun the moon, we have diseased everything. We all know it. We all feel it. Things are not where they should be, or they are where they should not be. Things are not quite what we remember. Sometimes it feels like they change before our eyes in ways we can barely bring ourselves to examine. Nothing is right, and the more we try to fight it, the worse it seems to get. In the end, it was all for nothing. While we can outrun the moon for a time, we can never escape it. There are many worlds, but there is only one moon, and it always finds us. The moon, or whatever now pretends to be our moon, whatever swallowed our moon, always learns. And it learned that coming from the sky was perhaps not its best option, so it decided to come another way. And one night, in December 2012, the eastern Pacific Ocean began to glow. It shone a breathtaking silver blue. At first, we thought it was a freak occurrence, a trick of atmosphere and clouds and moonlight that conspired to infuse the ocean with such rich silver radiance. But then the light spread down, 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 flooding the abyss itself with light, eating darkness that had always been, darkness that was older than the earth itself. Animals died, millions of them, billions of them. Fish, crustaceans, rays and urchins, starfish and eels, sharks and whales, all dying and rising to the surface, carried upon the tides in a gargantuan raft of dead white eyes and slick, rotting flesh. I still remember how the light bled between the bodies, outlining each bloated carcass in cleanest, burning silver. Then, one night, the light came out of the sea, rising like a sphere, like a second Earth, until it exploded. A great, pulsating blister that burst and drowned everything in radiant silver. Something full of dead, flat eyes. Something that gave those eyes to us. I know you don't want to remember. I know you believe that you don't remember. But you have to remember anyway. You have to remember because there are no other places for us, no neighboring thread that can absorb our reality. We've gone as far as we can go. We've tangled every thread we can. This is our last thread, our last plane, our last reality, our last hope. We are at the end of the line, and the moon is waiting for us. You have to remember that where there were once threads, there is only a knot. You have to remember this because within the knot are strands, small, hidden places big enough for 1 or 2 or 10 or 100 of us, broken, twisted pieces, frail rope bridges swinging over the bright and howling silver chasm of reality. You need to find those bridges, and you need to get out. But you can only find a bridge if you remember. So do what you have to. Lucid dreaming, regression therapy, meditation, even drugs, whatever it takes to remember, whatever it takes to find a bridge, whatever it takes to remember. Some of you will find good worlds, happy lives and safe threads hidden deep within the knot, so deep that the moon might never find you. Some of you will enter bad worlds, old worlds, nightmare worlds. I am sorry for that. I can't help you. I would if I could, but the knot is always shifting. There's no way to predict which bridge you'll find, but trust me, any world, yes, even a nightmare world, is better than a world where the moon is very angry. Now the moon is angry again. One night, very soon, you will look up at the sky in awe because the stars will be beautifully bright, pure, clean, and lovely. And then they will begin to bleed. So will the moon. Their blood will be silver. It will be radiance. It will cover the earth. And when it has flooded us for the final time, as we scream and drown in its sea of light, the moon will open all of its eyes. I know you don't want to know this. I know you have decided that it isn't true, but it is true. It is. And it's time to remember that the moon is very angry. It's the strangest thing. During launch, there's a cacophony of sound and a tremendous, shattering, mighty force of pressure. So much so that it feels as if in that moment, the whole world is collapsing. And you grit your teeth and your knuckles flush white on the grip. And you trust your harness, and you shut your eyes so tightly that you feel they'll bleed. But then, some minutes after leaving that pad, it's all over. And then there is nothing but the silence to be heard, and the beauty in the silence, and no weight of gravity at all to tie you down. So you turn around as you fly off and see the whole of the world there in your own little window. And you realize, when you look at the sphere of it, that on that sphere is all and was everything that is and that has ever happened. And every man, woman, and child, and all the wars and loves and songs and stories that ever were fought and cherished and sung and told right there, on that little blue marble that you can almost fit between your fingertips. So small it is. I was born and was a child there, right by that ocean, and I became a man in a town 1,200 miles away, a distance that from up here represents not much more than an inch. It is surreal. Every time I am out here among the stars, I feel the same smallness that is both awesome and terrible in equal measure. But our time on this place is coming to an end, I think, and if that is indeed the case, then the Earth isn't appreciably more than a womb, and the universe is the world, and we've only just taken our first of many, many steps out into the depths of it. God only knows what's out there, waiting for us in the deep. I think, too, that very soon we'll get the chance to find out. An anomaly? A gravitational anomaly, yes. And the source of it is right out there, out past the orbit of Jupiter. He'd pulled up a photograph, and on it you could see the starlight pulled into smears and streaks, indicative of a gravitational lens, the bending of space and time. What the hell is it? We don't yet know what it is, and that's what you're going to find out for us, if you want the job. I'd been ecstatic. Of course I wanted the job. I didn't become an astronaut after all to perform menial mechanical tasks around space stations so close to Earth that you could nearly brush the atmosphere with your fingertips. As rewarding as the job had been thus far, I joined instead to explore. A gravitational anomaly, a bending in space-time, right here in our own backyard, and of all the men and women alive, they'd chosen me to see it. My crew and I had trained for years for the journey, and all the while we did, NASA was building for us the Warhorse chariot in secret, for the purpose of crossing 600 million miles out into the realm of the gas giants, where this anomaly business resided.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Frances, a mission specialist on her 4th flight, said, when finally we'd arrived at the doorsteps of the thing. I joined her at the window, and together we stared out at it, The anomaly, a shifting weight of mass a few million more miles off, around which starlight from behind curved and oozed and slipped. I concurred. Yes, it is.
Where do you think it came from?
That's just the thing. It didn't come from anywhere. We've been watching it form for some years now.
Doesn't mean it didn't come from somewhere.
I concurred again. That's true. I suppose that's what we're here to find out. Warhorse Chariot began to circle the thing, and as it did, the crew got a mighty view of its front side. It was a bizarre formation of space, a depression as described, and growing too. Ruger, another veteran mission specialist, eventually said,
"Sir, what if it's a wormhole?"
I stopped for a moment with that consideration. I had to admit it hadn't yet crossed my mind, but after nearly a full day of witnessing the heaving and the writhing and the twisting of what laid in front of me, I was willing to believe in the existence of more than the textbook standard phenomenons of gravity.
And if it is, sir, just in case, why don't we send a signal down into it, see where it goes?
I couldn't reason against the suggestion, and so I nodded, and the crew concurred. And so a short burst of radio was dispatched into the anomaly. We ran over mountainous data sets as we waited, and traded ideas to and fro, and ruminated in the countless possibilities. And then, strange alien things began to occur.
Sir!
I flew over to the window yet again.
Look, sir, it's opening up!
And it was. The anomaly was indeed appearing, at the very least, and if the shape of the starlight behind it was any indication, to open.
What the hell?
What's it doing?
I don't know. Is it opening up somewhere else?
I don't know, just watch. What began as a depression in the space-time soon did indeed deepen into a hole, and then it widened and spread, and soon it wasn't merely reflecting the star's light, it produced its own. A powerful pulse of brilliant and blinding blue. All at once the crew shielded our eyes and turned away from the light, only peeking back as it faded.
God, it's a tunnel. Ruger, you son of a bitch.
Francis patted him on the back. So, what's our next move, Cap? Another specialist, a 10-year vet by the name of Jones, had said. You want to dive into that thing? I shook my head. No, we'll stay here and observe for now. You sure? Chance to make history, you want to pass that up? We have no idea what the hell lies on the other side, Jones. Our orders are to observe and collect data for research. He shrugged, and for a time, the crew merely discussed the implications of the discovery. As we did, though, we began drifting forward. It was difficult to notice at first, as the distance involved and the lack of stationary objects nearby made it impossible to eyeball, but the equipment noticed it, and no sooner did we hear the faint beeping than the chariot picked up more and more speed.
What the hell?
What the hell's going on? Are we moving?
I don't know.
Pilot Fowler was frantically scrambling over the controls.
It's not me, sir.
What do you mean it's not you? Can you stop the ship?
No, I'm trying, but the thrusters aren't even on. Fuel is stable.
All right, everyone calm down. We'll figure this out. Fowler, can you angle the thrusters away from the direction of movement?
I'll try.
And he did, and we felt the subtle rumble of the fire from those thrusters, and the descent into the anomaly began to slow, but it was a temporary respite.
We're slipping again.
Fowler flared up the thrusters in bursts, but whenever he did, the anomaly's pull got stronger and overwhelmed their effort in turn. Whatever this thing was, I realized, it was able to target its gravitational pull and adjust its intensity as needed, and Warhorse Chariot had no answer. Turn off the thrusters, Fowler, I said. No sense in wasting our fuel. He did, and a silent distress settled over the crew as the chariot flew into the anomaly. Warhorse Chariot continued its freefall into the mouth of the wormhole. At its own speed, it's a journey that would have taken days or weeks, but with the anomaly collapsing space and time itself in front of the ship and expanding it behind us, the ship gained impossible velocity. We approached the speed of light, and then we reached it, relative at least to the solar system outside our reference frame.
Holy shit. Guys, we're going at light speed. We're actually moving at fucking light speed. How is that possible?
We're not moving an inch inside our bubble of space, I said, without breaking eye contact with the anomaly. That's how. It's space itself that's moving, and there's no limit at how fast it can go. Another moment passed before I added, Everyone strap in, we're almost inside. And then the ship began to rumble and to shake and to groan, and the blue light brightened and enveloped us whole. Moments later, we entered the tunnel. The Warhorse Chariot exited the solar system. Neither space nor time retained their meaning in that place. There was no where, there was no when, there was only the ship and her crew, and a hull protected the madness of the journey by a sphere of space-time that flew through the tunnel made of the same stuff. Past 1,000 galaxies and 1,000,000 stars and 1,000,000,000 worlds, for a time it was beautiful to behold. But that time was fleeting and quick. Before we exited this dimension, the pressure of movement overwhelmed the integrity of the ship, and I heard a groaning of protesting metal, and then cracking, and then titanic crashing. The lights went out, and all sound in the cabin of the ship ceased at once. Hello? There was no answer. Fowler? Ruger? Silence and darkness and cold. Such frigid cold. My skin began to grow numb from it. Francis? You there? Baker? Nothing at all answered me. Slowly, I struggled to undo the seat harness, and then another flash of blue. It was bright, so exceedingly bright, in fact, that I couldn't see a thing or think, and it filled up the whole of the cosmos from where I sat, and it lingered. On our side of the wormhole, the pulse had merely been that, a heartbeat, a flash of light, and not more than an instant of time had been taken up by it. But here, it stayed active like a supernova or a star, and then I could feel the heat of the light, and it washed over me in waves. And then I began to feel something in my head. Something in the light, no doubt, that saw me and saw a usefulness for me. It was clawing its way through my mind, pulling up memories and dreams and thoughts and ideas and sifting through the lot of them as if it was searching for something. It hurt. God, it hurt. And in a lancing, sharp way. I grabbed my temples and squeezed shut my eyes, and I heard myself scream, but the harvesting continued nonetheless. I saw images and memories and thoughts and dreams. Perhaps it wanted me to see them. A birthday party, a ringing hallway bell, playing in the mud, the first kiss, a mountaintop snowfall, a sunset on the beach. What does this thing want? What do you want? I hear myself say. There is a pause. For a fleeting moment, the pain stops, and so too does the harvesting, but only for that moment. And when it's over, the process begins again, and the memories it finds begin to focus. My eyes roll back. A memory of a conversation is summoned. It is about nothing. An old coworker discussing expense reports with me. The light loses interest in swift order and then moves on. An early memory now. Another conversation. I'm speaking with my mother. I'm looking up at her in the kitchen with oven mitts on. She's telling me to wash up for supper. She speaks slowly and simply. I must be, 10? Younger? The light lingers a bit here and then moves on. Elementary school, or earlier, maybe kindergarten. We're learning penmanship today. I look down at my paper and see the alphabet scribbled there, in loops and scratches. The light lingers here too for a while, and then the memory fades. What do you want? I say again. Another pause, and then memory comes up. A high school buddy of mine, Greg Ricky, runs up to me after a football game and says the word, food? And then there's nothing. Perhaps the light is waiting for a response? Food? I say. Melissa looks down at the note I'd passed her 3 days before prom and says,
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, what kind of food? There's another pause before, just an image this time. A bolt of electricity in a thunderstorm, seen from my dorm window in 2001 or 2. Lightning? You eat lightning? How? My mother, after watching the dog piss on the floor, shouts,
No.
Okay, you don't eat lightning, then, so... A bouncing dodgeball in the high school gym, another image of lightning, and one of rippling air on pavement in the midst of a summer heat wave. A ball, okay, and lightning, and heat, like a combination of those things, is that it? Melissa again says,
Yes.
Okay, give me a second. Hot ball of energy, like a star? The image of the sun that popped up in my own head as I uttered the word gave the light some pause. Then I felt a force of power. It stung.
Yes.
Melissa says it yet again. A star for food? Okay, how? An image of an armadillo from a nature documentary. It curls up tightly into a ball, and then the memory fades. I don't follow. The image repeats itself and drags a bit on both ends. I see the creature walking for a moment, its weight shifting left to right, and then it stops and curls up into a ball while its little armor plates shield it. An armadillo? You eat like an armadillo? Mom shouts again.
No.
Now it's an image of a cat and a ball of yarn. It curls around the thing, and then there's another visual. A hand wrapping itself around a baseball. It throws it home. Something about curling into a ball or onto one?
Yes.
Okay, so you're hungry for food and you eat stars by, what, curling onto them? What the fuck is this? A new image. It's shocking and it's dark. I see the gates of a concentration camp and a pile of corpses. An inmate there gripping the bars of the fence. She's emaciated and desperate, but too sick to even cry for help. Her clothes hang off her limbs in excess. It's the saddest image I've ever seen. What the fuck was that? The famous photo of an African child with a vulture behind. His stomach is protruding, and even so, I can see each one of his ribs through the skin. He has days to live in such a state. Maybe hours. An image now from a newsreel. A crowd of desperate refugees, or citizens of the third world, it's unclear which, clambering onto a truck with the capital letters UN painted upon its side in white letters. The man standing atop the bed of it handing small amounts of food from a container to the crowd. He doesn't have nearly enough. The crowd presses in, and the truck is buried in their number, unable to move. What is this? I don't... Every time the images switched, I saw a new scene as horrible as the last. Okay, you're starving, is that right?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to help you. There's an explosion of pain behind my left eye, and then I felt nothing but chaos, disorder, and anger. I sensed that very, very clearly. Burning, twisting, desperate anger, and then an image of bones. A man screams for mercy. I doubt he received any. Armed men throw another man down a hillside and then fire automatic weapons into his heart. Images rotate in and back out again, and each consecutive depicts a scene of violence and terror and misery and suffering. At last, there is an image of a burning world. My world. The earth, scorched and ruined. Wait. It's not Earth. It's somewhere different. Another planet. This already happened, didn't it?
Yes.
I was afraid to ask the next inevitable question, but too curious not to. What are you? A new image entered my mind. This time, like the last, from the light and not from myself. I saw a memory of a dream playing out before me. A fleet of starships arrayed up in a concave formation for battle, firing lancing spears of energy into a wormhole, and then the blue light spilled on through it, followed in turn by a mass of alien metal. The ships ramped up the rate of fire and the intensity of it, but they couldn't harm the thing coming through, or so much as slow it down. Slowly, one by one, as it became clear, the advance of the machine could not be stopped. The ships broke through formation and began to flee, but they weren't fast enough. The machine, after a time, gained the hot side of the gate and poured on through. With pulsing blasts of light, entire ships disintegrated to ash and nothing more. A capital ship in the formation's midmost section fired a round of some new form of fire, and the machine took the hit with a wound, but not even that did appreciably more than scratch an arm of the thing. The ship met a swift fate like the others. A scene from the planet from which the ships had hailed. There are dead things, alien corpses, cities aflame, and the end of the world. The mighty shadow of an eclipse falls across the scene, and then there is darkness. From space, now, I see the thing, in all the magnitude of its vastness. It is terrible and awesome in equal measure. This machine, and having done away with resistance, it has cast out great arms of metal from the center apparatus that spills forth the light, and wrapped them around the mass of the star there. Then, as I watch, a funnel of the star's plasma is sucked up by gravity into the machine and it begins to feed. The star is dwindling. The star is no more. All that now remains in the grasp of the machine is a sphere of hot space. The machine spills its blue light to the depths of the abyss in search of other things to devour. Another world. Above it, I can see the shadow of the machine's arms as it consumes the star. There is no life here to mourn its passing. Another world destroyed. There are starships splintered in orbit, lifeless and useless, and parts of their hulls rammed into the planet's backside. Their attempt to stop the machine has ended in disaster. The machine gathers those parts and adds them to its mass. Over unspeakable units of time and countless such battles, it has grown large, too large in fact to sustain itself. Ever it searches for more food. The machine, having destroyed yet another system, shudders and quakes. It is not enough. Parts of the machine's limbs have gone dark. There is not enough energy, enough food to feed the whole of its mass. It needs more. I can feel its hunger. I can feel the growth of it. In desperation, and with the last of its energy, the machine warps space-time itself into points and rivers. Doorways are opened up. There is no rhyme and there is no reason. Countless such portals have been ripped into the fabric of the universe, and through them, the machine has poured its light. That blue light, in search of sustenance. I see a new image, from my mind again. It is from a science textbook, and it is of my own star, the sun. The light from the machine is digging again through the dusty corners of my mind. It needs information, it needs it desperately, and here I am, an endless treasure trove of the stuff, more accessible to it than to myself. I can feel memories being ripped free and thrown. A sick day, a movie theater, an astronaut speaking at my school, an Air Force recruitment center, and a first flight, and the majesty of speed, a rocket launch, knuckles white on the edge of the harness, a first look at the Earth from above. No, fuck you. You can't have that. You can't take that. I live there. I managed to say, weakly. Stop. But inside my mind, I resist with effort. I pull up my own memories now to throw in its face, to slow it down. The coworker approached me again. Hey, Darren, did you get my email? I need those expense reports by Thursday. Yeah, I got you, man. I'll get on that now. Okay. Oh, hey, did you talk to Brad earlier? He's I flinched. The fuck? Mom yelled.
No.
And the digging begins again. Data, mountains of it to be poured over. A look at the sun from a Pacific side beach. The machine tastes the warmth of it. Its hunger roars, but I push back harder. Everything I have. What else? What else do I have? My name. I have my name. Darren Gray.
No. Damn it, Sydney. Not in the house. No.
A new image. I see the sun now from the window of the Warhorse Chariot, and then a childhood friend ran up to me on the playground during a game of hide and seek and said, "Dude, where's Eric? Where's..." Another image of the sun, white and alone. The friend says again, Where? Danny Gray, Danny, that's not my name. Danny, something with a D, I think, right? The sun again. Where? I can't, I don't. The pain is increased tenfold. My vision swam and burned. I thrashed and grabbed again at my temples and screamed, but the light, the machine, doubled down yet again. Call signs, wedding days, a hospital bedside, TV documentaries. Apollo, Voyager 1, Earth's radio presence. It was getting even closer. Danny Green.
Sir?
My father rummaged through the kitchen, phone in one hand. He muted it with the other. Anyone see my pen? He said. Danny Green.
Sir?
Never mind, my father had said. I found it. I felt a monstrous, electrifying surge of power, and instantly the light began to fade, and the pain with it. The sensation of mental invasion. It felt like waking up from a dream. But the nightmare hadn't faded yet.
Sir?
I stumbled back. I felt that much. I stumbled and something caught me.
Captain!
I opened my eyes. It was Frances. She'd been crying. What?
Sir, I've been calling you. I said to stay out of the light.
I looked around the cabin. The power was on. The crew was here. All of them were getting up off the floor. All of them stared up at me with confusion and with concern. What happened?
I don't know,
she said.
We sent that signal into that wormhole thing, and then this weird blue light just poured out of it. And we all hit the deck, but...
She looked around.
But you didn't. And you had this look on your face like you were in this trance, and I don't know, I thought you were dead.
She started to cry a bit. I looked over at the others. Nobody else saw that?
So what, sir?
Anything at all? There was something in the light. I saw this machine in there, and it... I stopped. I was losing them. Baker said, "Sir, I think you should sit down." No, we have to leave now. What? We just fucking got here. I know that. Don't you fucking think I know that? I began to stow away cargo and strap things down for a boost. Everyone strap in. Fowler, plot us a course out of here. Baker grabbed my arm. "Sir, I mean it. You need to sit down, okay? Gather your thoughts. Jones, can you get him some water or something?" "I don't need water, Baker." I shook him off and continued loading. "Fowler, on the seat. Now, let's go." Fowler looked at the others, and they shook their heads.
Sir.
Frances stepped forward, always the peacemaker she was.
Don't do this, please.
Shut up. None of you saw that thing. Fowler, what did I say?
What thing? The machine?
Fowler, get on the seat, now. I felt a slamming weight in my midsection, and down I went, with Ruger on top of me. "Get the fuck off me!" I thrashed and threw all my weight against him. Baker piled on, and then Jones, and against their combined weight, I didn't stand a chance. They hauled me to my feet and began dragging me to the back of the
Guys, look!
It was Frances's voice. We stopped and looked up. She was pointing out the window towards the anomaly. We did, and instantly I felt 3 pairs of hands loosen up their grips. I fell to the floor. What the fuck is that? I wiped a trail of blood from my nose and said, "It's here." The deck of the Warhorse chariot descended into madness. "Baker, can we raise NASA from here?" "I don't know. I can try. I mean, what the fuck is that thing? Fowler, you getting us out of here?"
I'm trying, man, but...
"Hey!" I shouted. "Everyone calm down and strap in. Now! Fowler, plot a course for home." Obedience, this time, was immediate. For a fleeting moment, I heard nothing but the buckle of harnesses and the shuffling of feet and the rumble of thrusters. And then the chariot was off. But behind us came the machine, and it did so with utterly shocking speed. I watched it pour on through the widening wormhole, and only then did I appreciate the magnitude of the thing.
Sir?
"I see it, Fowler. How we doing?"
We're moving, sir. Fast as I...
The ship shook violently as a pulsing blast of blue light rocketed by overhead and nearly vaporized the hull.
Shit! The hell was that?
"It's shooting at us, that's what that was." Another blast. The Warhorse chariot felt its heat and the force of fire, and the crew nearly spilled out of their harnesses. "Come on, baby. Come on. But the ship was too slow. I knew it. Fowler knew it. Baker and Frances, Jones and Ruger, they knew it too. And we shared the intuition, even as we fled and said not a word about it. A flash of light, another shudder. I sat down and powered up a computer and began writing this account, a record we won't be able to give in a hearing, and I started it with a description of a home I'll never see again.
"Sir,"
Fowler said.
We're slowing down. Fast."
Another flash. Chariot nearly split at the rivets, and for a split second, all we could see in the light was nothing at all. I shielded my eyes for the duration before the fade and kept up my writing.
"Orders, sir?"
I stopped typing and then stood, and the crew watched as the ship slipped in her run. "Turn it about."
"What?"
"Turn the ship around. Fly towards it. If we time it just right..."
"Then we can take a hit of that blue laser right inside the firing chamber."
A hush fell over the crew. They knew what this was, a call to spend their lives in service of mankind. I looked out at the machine. We had 15 minutes left, maybe less, before the full form of its mass exited the wormhole. And so we had just as much time to act.
"Sir, are you..."
"Do it, Fowler!"
It's the right call, Captain.
So the Warhorse chariot adjusted its heading for its hunter, and the machine filled up the view of the deck display. Frances closed her eyes, and Fowler set his jaw. The gravity kicked up by the sheer mass of the machine took the chariot on a wicked pull, and one bolstered by the ship's thrusters, and the gap between us closed quickly. I typed furiously. The machine's central apparatus opened its yawn to fire, and that old blue plasma pooled up in its center, and I pointed it out to Fowler.
"I see it, sir."
I put a hand on his shoulder and said, "You did great, son. And now I bring this account to the current moment. As I write, the machine hastens up its firing process. A piece of it still lives on in my mind, I think, because I can feel a foreign panic when I myself am at peace. I believe it knows that when all the numbers are added, there is nothing it can do to prevent the Warhorse chariot from flying into its firing mechanism at the moment of discharge. It is inevitable, and for that reason I have accepted it. And Baker too, and Jones, and Ruger, and Francis, and Fowler, all my brothers and sisters, they have accepted it, and they are praying, closing their eyes, and there is not a crew ever made that is finer to die with. To NASA, if you receive this transmission, know that we died well, and know too that although there are monstrous things out here in the deep, there are also wonders in it. Never lose the spirit to find them. Darren Bradford Gray, commander of the USS Warship Chariot. At 6:09 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, an explosion event was picked up by the Hubble Space Telescope and an array of surface-based observatories and private telescopes. NASA claims the event was a large-scale asteroid impact. Other satellites have been purposed with examining the area of the incident. As early as August, they have spotted numerous pieces of floating metal, most of which will either join the asteroid belt or fall into the surface of Jupiter, and an excess amount of radiation, seemingly indicative of a collapsing gravitational event. Closer inspection has revealed that the anomaly Warhorse Chariot was initially dispatched in secret to inspect has ceased to exist. Some private telescope owners, however, have reported an unidentified blue light flashing in pulses from exactly this region. NASA has made no official comment as of this time. I remember the first time I witnessed that gruesome sight, right in front of me. It had been all over the news for the past week, but until that moment, I was still unable to take any of the stories seriously. I guess that's what happens in a world where the media exaggerates every little story they encounter to pull in more dull-minded viewers. The first started in the icy wastelands of Russia back in 2012. Hikers passing through on their travel discovered bodies half buried in the snow, their abdomens mutilated and occasional limb removed, only to be found a few meters from the body. At first, these finds were put down to wild animals desperately searching for food in the lifeless tundra. They barely even made news on Russian broadcasting networks, only the locals to the areas, of which there are few in such a desolate place, really heard the stories. It's strange, now that I think about it. The attacks had been happening all through late December and simply went unreported until February, when things became more severe. Maybe those doomsday lunatics were onto something after all, and no one noticed. As the days went on, after the initial attacks, panic in the Russian wilderness began to spread as more bodies were found in the wild, remains scattered in the snow, and yet an even larger amount of people became reported as missing. It wasn't until mid-January that the first body was discovered in a public area, in a small rural town, sitting on the edge of the wastes. 2 disfigured bodies were discovered by a few poor citizens on their way to work, their limbs scattered all over the streets. This was the first case that managed to work its way into the mainstream media outlets. Everybody just dismissed it as a murder case, the sort that you hear about in foreign countries all the time. What kept my attention was something the autopsies discovered. The murder hadn't even happened at night. It seemed to have happened only an hour before the first poor soul discovered the freshly broken body. I mentally gagged at the thought of finding a body strewn across the floor, still bleeding. As the days went on, more and more reports came in of bodies being found in small villages across Russia, completely destroyed and with no clue as to the cause, and just like the original, all of them had happened in broad daylight, but with no witnesses to recall how it happened. It was February when the first big incident occurred. I remember it distinctly because it happened to be my birthday. Breaking news all over the world, insane stories coming from Russia. It seemed impossible to believe at first. The anchorman on TV spoke quickly in an urgent voice of barricades being erected in Moscow as people from outside ran screaming to its walls, begging to be let in. What she said next made my heart jump. People in cities and towns all over Moscow were being eviscerated in plain daylight. The attacker? Nothing. People were being cut to ribbons in their homes and the streets all over Russia in plain daylight, but there was no visible attacker. I couldn't believe it when I heard it. It had to be a hoax. It didn't make any sense. However, my curiosity overpowered me. I had to see it for myself. I loaded up my laptop and began my trawl of some of the darker parts of the web, in search of videos of the insane claims. As it turned out, there were thousands of videos on the subject, so I clicked on a random one. It was being filmed from a rooftop and involved frightened people of all ages, running through the streets in panic with nothing noticeable chasing them. I remember moving to click on another link after thinking that nothing would happen, when suddenly a man in the group seemed to scream and then explode. It just happened. There was no warning, no sign of attack. The man wasn't even at the back of the group. It seemed as though fate had picked a random person and just decided he would die there and then. I sat in shock as the video ended abruptly. Moving the mouse up again, I clicked on another video. This one was being filmed from behind a barricade to hold back fleeing citizens. I guess that was their idea of controlling the population. Various men in military uniforms lined the barricade with large rifles, looking on at the crying, begging people with little emotion. Then, out of nowhere, one of the women at the front of the crowd was ripped apart by the air and thrown across the military's front line. I gagged a little at the sight, despite having been reinforced against this sort of thing. In a panicked response, the soldiers sprayed their guns at the point of the attack, as if trying to hit the invisible assailant, but the bullets went through the space and took out the civilians behind the remains. My mind was struggling to get grips with itself. I honestly didn't know what to think. I always imagined myself in these situations before, acting like I was in a movie, analyzing every mystery and saving the day by solving it, but this just made no sense. I was scared. The next day, Russia entered lockdown, as did many other countries, in hopes of keeping this ghostly threat out of their nations. News from Russia dropped as a result. It was completely cut off from the rest of the world, and we could only hope they were okay. And then, life continued. Of course, people talked of it, but everyone just seemed to stop fearing it. In reality, it seems we were just trying to put it behind us because of our fear. Humans fear what they don't understand. And so, it seems, not thinking about it was a suitable way of combating that fear. It wouldn't last. The year moved on, and days became longer, and then that day came. The one I wish I could forget. It was a bright day in the middle of May, and I was out with a group of friends celebrating the completion of another year at university. We were walking and laughing to the in-jokes we had created over the last year, trying to remember them all before we retreated to our hometowns. At one point, we stopped while a few of our party went to buy food from a shop, and I began talking to my closest friend, Ryan. We were midway into a conversation about what game to play online next, and then it was so abrupt. Just like in the videos, he was halfway through a word and his body just burst into pieces. Blood and entrails splattered across my body. I stumbled back in horror as my mind processed what had just happened. Around me, people ran away from the area, screaming for help, but I barely noticed. Where my best friend once stood was now just a bloody mess, and my mind was never given a chance to prepare itself. I dropped to my knees and vomited on the floor, crying. It was at least 15 minutes before I was able to take control of myself again and actually get up. By that point, the police had arrived and were telling me to remain still, as if they thought I had done this unspeakable act. I remember sitting in that gloomy room, barely being able to answer any of the questions the investigators had for me, simply replying with a nod or a shake of the head. They told me that this wasn't the only place it had happened. In fact, it had become a worldwide pandemic. The brief period of peace had just been the calm before the storm. What we thought was sealed in Russia was now everywhere, and it wasn't even spreading from a single point as it had been at the start. It was a full-scale attack. Nowhere was safe. We were evacuated to a military base and defense points in hopes of holding back this invisible invasion, but we all knew it was no use. Me and my family were taken to a military installation in the countryside where we stayed for a month. No contact with the outside world was permitted, in fear of giving our location away to the creatures. A single analog TV was our only view of the outside world. It seemed a few rogue pirate news stations had popped up to keep those locked away up to date with current events. The quality was terrible, but in a time like that, it was better than nothing. We heard reports of strange lights being sighted, not in the sky, but closer to the ground. We were told of countries falling one by one, their entire populations being wiped out. There was also one report of scientists discovering something in the sky. The report said they couldn't see it, but whatever it was giving out a lot of energy, and it was big. The size of a small moon. The size of a small moon, in fact. Images of Russia came in from aerial photographs. Moscow was ablaze, towering buildings reduced to rubble, and in their remains shook large, shimmering waves of fire. A close-up of the street showed roads bathed in red, with human remains dotted around several areas. The video feed switched to another aerial clip of a gigantic crater. The host went on to describe the location as a former nuclear power plant that had entered meltdown 2 months ago due to no one controlling it. At the end of the clip, the camera quickly moved upward to focus on a second helicopter that was now spinning out of control. Against the window, flashes of that all-too-familiar red color could be seen as the video suddenly cut out. The last broadcast on that channel was the most disturbing. We switched the TV on to find a man in tears with streaks of blood down his face. He looked extremely scared and spoke with a weak, trembling voice.
"They've come. The angels have come for me, Lord. They've taken everyone here, and now it's my turn. Judgment Day is here, loyal viewers. There is nothing left for me on this earth anymore. But for those who might be left, I think I know how to survive against them." Just my luck, huh? To find out when it's too late. All you have to do is stay out of the...
His sentence was cut off by a scream as his body was ripped in two, right before our eyes. The channel didn't shut off, though. It's still there, in fact, but all you can see now is the decaying corpse of an insane man, one of his eyes limply staring at you through the camera lens. Since then, there were no more accessible channels. Our last view of the outside world was gone. It didn't really matter anymore to us. We were a small group of people left amongst what must have been less than 1 million humans on the earth. The what and where was no longer our concern. For a while, everything was quiet. The soldiers kept us in line. We fed off what rations the base had. We stuck to strict curfews and attempted to socialize and keep ourselves entertained in our new little personal world. We were somehow quite content with our new lives. With no outside world to bother us, no responsibilities or concerns for anything but our little community. On top of that, the lack of news about the outside events allowed us to almost forget about what was happening. Until one night, at the end of August, I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of a scream. I was on the floor of a large room containing hundreds of other sleeping evacuees. The realization still startled me every time I woke up, even though I had been sleeping in these conditions for the past month. My vision was blurred somewhat as I attempted to focus on my surroundings, and my body appeared to be mildly damp and slightly sticky. I didn't think much of it. I had had many restless nights here, and we were in a cramped, humid bunker. On the far side of the room, there were 2 dim lights creeping in through the doorways. Someone must have left the light on in the corridor, I thought to myself. It was rather puzzling. The thoroughness of the soldiers here would never have allowed something like this. All the lights had to be switched off at 8 p.m., and they checked every night. Surely by now a guard would have found this and switched it off again. Maybe it was one of them doing a midnight check on us all. That's when I noticed something odd. One of the lights was moving. Not moving behind the doorway, but it seemed as if the doorway itself was moving. It drifted silently across, closing in on the other door. At first I thought it must have been a soldier with a torch. I winced and rubbed my eyes, attempting to focus on the object, and then, just as it emerged with the light of the door, I managed to focus on what seemed impossible. It had the shape of a tall, disturbingly thin humanoid, but where the body should be, there was nothing. No abdomen, no limbs, no head. The outline of the mysterious being seemed to just drift across the wall in an area of light. The first thought that entered my mind was inverted shadow. I know it sounds crazy, but it was as if instead of creating a shadowy outline in a lit room, something was creating a bright outline in a dark room. Unfortunately, this was the best view I could get of the entity, as it seemed to literally merge with the light from the doorway and disappear. My body was frozen at the sight, and out of fear, I chose to lay down and try to get some sleep again, hoping that whatever it was, it wouldn't notice me. It was another long, restless night. I woke up at 8 a.m. Light peered through the small slits in the top of the bunker and kept the room bright enough to see wall to wall in the giant reinforced mass of cement. I wished I hadn't seen it though. Blood covered the walls,
where once there had been sleeping bags, now laid the remains of a silent massacre. What I thought had been my own sweat from the night before turned out to be the remains of my partners who had once slept beside me. I screamed. Not a single person was spared that night. Well, save for myself. Walking through the base, it seemed that these things had made short work of every human on site, and yet the gate still remained firmly shut. Guards posted on watch points had their destroyed bodies hanging over the rails. It was quiet. I sat in the middle of that compound, alone, sobbing to myself. I was alone in the world. These things had killed everyone I knew and loved, and I was lost. I didn't know what to do. I slept in that compound for 3 days until I saw him again, that man of light, eerily and slowly drifting through the darkness, emerging with the light once again. This time I could have sworn he noticed me. He stopped and turned until he was head on with me and just stared at me. I couldn't move. My body just refused to listen, and then the being left. I don't know why they keep sparing me. Is it for amusement? Because they pity me or something more? I just can't get my head around any of it. After that night, I took as many supplies from the base as I could and journeyed toward the nearest village, which is where I now reside. I managed to find a house with a basement and locked myself in there with the supplies, but I never turned the lights on anymore. For 3 weeks, I have been living in total darkness. Not because I think they'll find me, but I think I know what these things are now. I once read a science fiction book that detailed a possible route a species may take in its evolutionary course. The species would evolve beyond the simple realm of the physical and become a being of pure energy. When a species would reach this point, it would obtain near omniscient knowledge and have no care for life or death anymore. What the intentions of such a hyper-powerful species would be are impossible to predict, since their minds are so much more advanced than ours. It seems in our universe, a species has gotten there before us. They are the light. Where we always feared an alien species abducting us in the middle of the night, it turns out that that darkness is our only safety from the real threat, the beings of light. 2 days ago, the second star appeared, a red giant that now sits opposite our sun, bathing both halves of the earth in light. And now there is no longer night on this world. There is no place to hide on the outside. I don't know what they want with our planet or why they chose to kill us all, but I know this. They have killed everyone here. If you're out there, don't go into the light. Stick to the shadows if you want any chance of living. Darkness doesn't kill them, but it sure slows them down. There is a light coming from beneath the basement door. I have to go now.
Ground control, do you read me? A voice buzzed over the radio. I leaned forward at my chair, studying the signal received from our station in geostationary orbit. As I turned my microphone back on, I briefly admired the fact that the message was coming from over 35,000 kilometers away, from a little metal box hanging in space as it slowly orbited Earth. "I hear you loud and clear, Holloway. Good to have you back," I responded, with overwhelming relief filling my voice. The astronauts aboard the GSSS had been out of contact for the better part of an hour. Whether it be due to some kind of interference or technical problems remained to be answered, but it alone had put us all on edge, considering anything in geostationary orbit has an orbital period equal to the Earth's rotation. In layman's terms, it means that the station never strayed out of reach relative to our position on Earth. "What happened out there? We lost contact for a moment." The rest of the crew and ground control sat in silence, each of the scientists listening in on our conversation. I felt relieved, but something about Holloway's voice sounded so urgent, almost scared.
"We found something,"
he began.
"We're not exactly sure what, but that's what cut us off. We just lost signal."
"You found something? Could you be more specific?"
"I can do you one better. I'm uploading the missing footage as we speak.
Holloway said. The GSSS had remained under constant supervision since its launch in early 2012. It was a covert mission meant both to study human endurance in space and to track foreign bodies entering Earth's orbit. Within a few minutes, the missing video and a few photos had been uploaded to the server. While the footage itself mostly showed the inside of the station and the astronauts gathered around at one of the few windows as they tried to figure out what happened, I was more interested in the pictures. I opened up the first one, displaying it on the control room's main screen. It was pointed outward from Earth into deep space, filled with a starry sky that one couldn't dream to observe from Earth itself. But in the center of the photograph lingered a black patch of nothingness, as if a part of the picture had failed to receive any sort of light exposure. "Oh, Holloway, what exactly am I looking at?" I held my breath as I awaited a response. I had never seen anything quite so empty. I felt like I was staring into a black hole, but that obviously couldn't have been the case, as it would have annihilated the station within a split second.
We don't know. It just hung there approximately 25 meters away from our station as we passed. We couldn't get any readings on it. No radiation, no movement, no force, nothing. According to our instruments, it doesn't even exist.
Can you still see it?
No, we passed it 47 minutes ago. Just regained contact. It appears to be locked in its orbital path. It doesn't make any sense. But following this trajectory, we'll see it again in just over 23 hours. We'll send more data then.
The next day was spent by the office analyzing the little information we'd received from the crew aboard the GSSS, but with only a picture and limited readings claiming the black spot in space didn't exist, we could do little except wait. Yet none of us ventured home for some much-needed shut-eye. Instead, we waited at the office as 1,000 different theories formed in the back of our minds. Then, around the same time the following day, we lost contact with the crew. By then, we already knew what was going on. While it was a worrisome phenomenon, we knew it wouldn't even last an hour. Sure enough, as the day before, it was a temporary problem.
Ground control, we have a problem. Do you copy?
A voice called through the radio. At first, I didn't recognize the voice. Holloway was the man in charge of the station, so to speak, but for whatever reason, someone else had taken it upon themselves to contact us. This is ground control. Who am I speaking with?" I asked, not able to recognize the voice due to interference.
It's Matthews. We passed by the hole again. It's bigger. We only missed it by a few meters. Next time we pass, we'll hit it.
All right, Matthews, you have to change the station's altitude immediately. Then I need to speak to Holloway.
We locked him inside the sleeping quarters. He's lost it.
Lost it? What happened?
He kept staring outside the windows as we passed the hole. Then he just went unresponsive. By the time we figured out what was happening, he'd already sabotaged the CMGs. We're drifting.
Can you repair it? Was all I could think to ask.
I don't think so. We'll need to... Wait. How the hell did Holloway get out? Stop it!
The message was cut off abruptly. Matthews, are you there? I practically screamed into the radio. We desperately scrambled to regain any contact, but no matter what we did, the GSSS remained dark. Hours passed with the station heading for direct collision with the strange cosmic phenomenon, and even if the crew was still alive up there, we hadn't the faintest clue what would happen when they finally crashed. By the time another day had passed, most of us had gone upwards of 70 hours without sleep. Some had collapsed at their desks, and every available member had been called in, but it wouldn't help. But exactly 27 minutes before impact, we received the last transmission we'd ever get from the crew aboard the station. This is what we heard.
Ground control, this is Matthews. The comms were sabotaged after Holloway escaped. We lost him alongside Garcia. We had to kill them. They didn't leave us any choice. We spent the past day trying to shift course to no avail. I don't even know if I can get the radio up and running for long enough to send this message. In about 15 minutes, we'll lose contact as we get within reach of the hole. Then we'll collide. I don't know what will happen once we do, but I doubt any of us will ever see Earth again.
He paused for a moment, his breath turning erratic as it became obvious just how scared he was.
Don't forget our names once we're gone. Frank Matthews, Melissa Cameron, David Rikers, Henry Jenkins. We're about to venture into an unknown world. Tell our families we're sorry we couldn't make it home. Tell them that Kyle Holloway and Gabriel Garcia died as heroes. What happened wasn't their fault. I wish we had more time. Goodbye."
With that final transmission, contact was once again lost, as well as any visuals we had on the station. It had entered the dark rift in space, and as we pointed our telescopes at its supposed location, we could see it grow in real time, slowly expanding across the night sky. While it was too little to be seen unless told where to point, we estimated that merely a year would pass before it could be seen through a hobby telescope. Within 2, it would be visible with the naked eye. We mourned the astronauts that would never be mentioned in any kind of news outlet. Their mission to expand the scope of mankind had been secret, so their deaths would go unnoticed by all but those who loved them. I thought it odd that such is the destiny for most of mankind. As death finally grips us, we're all too quickly forgotten. Even the heroes, the greatest minds, and the most famous stars will eventually be washed away by time itself, the great unknown of the universe. We're all equally expendable. Once we'd scanned the skies for any trace of debris that might have originated from the station, we finally realized that it hadn't just been destroyed, but swallowed up by the dark rift. It didn't matter where we looked or what kind of probes we sent out to search for the dead crew. They were erased from our part of the galaxy. But in the wake of their demise, something more sinister lurked in the back of our minds. What would happen as the rift grew? Would it ever reach Earth? At first, there was little we could do except observe until a probe could be sent out. A job that, on its own, would take the better part of a year, even with an exceptional amount of funding. Of course, getting money was an easier task when a planet-ending catastrophe would annihilate us within the decade. 6 months we spent observing as the rift was growing exponentially in size. What had started out as a pothole-sized rift had grown as large as a house. We recalculated, estimating that within 5 years it would expand enough to consume Earth. Then, one night when I was packing up my things, dreaming of a bottle of whiskey which I'd need to aid my sleep through another panicked night, I got an alert blaring from my computer. It was already late, leaving little more than a skeleton crew at the base, meaning I'd have to stay behind to deal with whatever minor error it probably was. I walked back to my computer, dropping my things as I realized what had just been detected. It was the GSSS emerging from the rift and moving towards us. The signal was weak, but unmistakably belonged to the station. I grabbed the radio and attempted to make contact. "This is ground control. Does anyone copy?" I called out in excitement, knowing fully well that even if the crew had survived the initial disappearance, they would have long since starved to death, as they were just a week away from the next supply delivery by the time they went missing. "Is anyone there?" I repeated to no response. With that, an emergency was declared, calling all available personnel to work. According to the signal we received from the CPODs, there was no sign of life aboard the station, so we initiated a station-wide forced download of all footage, all data, everything we could get our hands on before the station hit our atmosphere and burned up. People were running around screaming orders at each other as petabytes of corrupted data loaded itself onto our hard drives. We were frantically trying to find a way to redirect the station so that it would burn up completely in atmosphere and not rain down as debris on innocent people, but it was a futile task, and we still hadn't calculated its exact trajectory. But in spite of our best efforts, the station had gone dark. Even with the limited contact we had, any ability to maneuver once there had been disabled, either by outside forces or by internal sabotage. All we could do was watch as it disintegrated over the west coast of Mexico, landing 13 miles offshore into the ocean. While it was not an event easily visible to the public, no one knew the nature of the incoming debris, even had they seen it. We scrambled to send out a crew to pick up what little salvage junk we could find, hoping to at least find traces of the dead astronauts. While the salvage team was on the task, we set out to repair the downloaded footage. In terms of observation, the GSSS stood unmatched. Every inch of the station was monitored 24 hours a day, with the limited exception of the lavatories. We had eyes on the astronauts all the time, not only with visuals and audio, but with the systems functioning itself. Usually it was a semi-live feed, but in times without contact, the data was quickly downloaded, which meant we already had everything up until the moment they were swallowed by the hole. After the fact, there was less information. The first few hours of footage remained intact, so the office gathered around to observe it, none daring to speak as we got our first look into what could only be a completely new world. A picture came to view, taking place during the last moment of our conversation.
Can you repair it?
I heard myself ask over the radio. Matthews was standing there, his face glued to various panels used to control the CMGs.
I don't think so. We'll need to... Wait. How the hell did Holloway get out? Stop it!
Holloway managed to break out and had torn the comms apart. Based on the limited view we got of him on the footage, he looked emotionless, empty.
Get the fuck back!
Garcia yelled as he held up a wrench. Floating around in zero gravity made fighting a different kind of challenge, but a proper swing could still significantly injure anyone unfortunate enough to be a recipient. Garcia and Matthews grabbed onto Holloway and brought him back into the sleeping quarters, where they tied him up. All the while, he never spoke a single word. He just kept staring at the windows.
What happened to you?
Matthew asked with no response.
We gotta fix the comms.
Garcia chimed in. Cameron and Rikers were already hard at work trying to repair the CMGs, while Jenkins was attempting to piece together what remained of the communication station.
The gyroscopes are more important. If that hole keeps growing, we'll hit it during our next orbit.
Matthew said.
Stay with Commander Holloway. I'll check on the others.
Matthews exited the sleeping quarters while Garcia sat by Holloway.
Come on, you have to talk to us. Why did you sabotage the station?
Holloway still refused to respond. He just kept staring out the window.
Did you see something in the hole?
Garcia asked. That time, Holloway turned his direction back at Garcia, finally acknowledging that he'd heard the question. He appeared to be whispering something, but it couldn't be heard over the audio channels.
What was that?
He asked as he bent closer. Holloway then whispered something inaudible to Garcia, who instantly stood back up in shock. The concern, the fear that had been visible on his face only moments before, had been washed away and replaced by a bizarre sense of apathy. He bent down to untie Holloway without speaking a word. The two of them then both looked hollowed out, just uniformly working together.
Garcia, what did you do?
Jenkins asked as he saw the two of them enter the main section. In response, Garcia just grabbed one of the tools Jenkins was using and hit him over the head. Blood poured out from the wound, suspended in the weightless environment in red small balls. Seeing what was about to happen, Matthews, Rikers, and Cameron all pushed themselves toward the two psychotic crew members and did their best to disarm them. Their struggle drove them across the ship as Jenkins' blood started hitting the wall. Most of the sensitive electronics were secure, but where the blood managed to enter, a few unimportant systems were destroyed. Garcia was by far the largest of the group, and even in zero gravity, that proved an advantage. But at some point in the fight, Cameron managed to get a kick in, pushing Garcia headfirst into the airlock. Then they pushed Holloway in with him and locked it.
What the fuck do we do now?
Riker said. Cameron was busy attending to the wounded, unconscious Jenkins. His wound was bleeding profusely, but Cameron quickly applied a makeshift bandage to prevent his blood from covering the walls of the station. Once he was deemed stable, Cameron joined the rest of her crew in trying to repair the control movement gyroscope. While the comms were important, the main priority was getting the station away from the Void's orbit before collision. The crew spent the next 20 or so hours trying to repair the hopelessly damaged CMGs, but it was a futile task. None of them had known the system as well as Holloway, and with him locked away, there was nothing they could do. Around the 20th hour, a clunk could be heard coming from inside the airlock. Holloway and Garcia had somehow managed to break a hole in the wall, giving them direct access to the airlock's door mechanics. Despite their psychotic state, they were well aware of the station's systems.
Holloway, stop it!
Matthew screamed over the station's speaker system.
If you damage the airlock, we're all going to die!
But the two men didn't care. They were so far gone from their former selves that not even the immediate threat of death seemed to worry them.
We have to eject them.
Kill them. We can't.
Despite her opposition to the idea, her voice was meek. She was smart enough to know that there wasn't another choice.
Either they die or we all do. At this point, it's not a question of morality, but simple math.
Both Cameron and Matthews looked at him in despair. Jenkins wasn't even conscious and able to give input. They just nodded, all of them knowing exactly what had to be done.
Holloway, Garcia, you either stop that shit or we eject you into space. You're going to die if you don't stop it.
Cameron said over the speakers, but her message was ignored.
It's time. Let's just get it over with. As the next in command, I'll pull the trigger.
Matthews said. Everything had already been prepared. All that remained was to input the command that would override the system and kill the crewmen.
May God forgive me for this.
He mumbled to himself as he hit enter. The inner airlock sealed itself while the outer prepared to open. Within a minute, the doors opened and the two men were forcefully pulled into the vacuum of space. There are many misconceptions when it comes to death by the vacuum of space. Contrary to common belief, one does not immediately freeze, nor does your body explode from the sudden change in pressure. Truth be told, death in space is one of the least dignified ways of leaving life. The air would be sucked from your lungs with a great likelihood of rupturing them in the process as the saliva on your tongue boils. Whatever's still left in your intestines would be equally removed. Within 15 seconds, you'd lose consciousness due to hypoxia. I took solace in that fact as I looked over the footage, that at least the poor astronauts weren't awake to experience their horrible deaths. The crew stayed silent for a few minutes after the ejection. None of them were brave enough to break the silence until Matthew finally realized he was now in charge of the station.
The GMCs are done. We need to try to get a message out before the void swallows us,
he said with a defeated voice, albeit with a hint of purpose. They only had a few hours until impact, and who knew exactly how large the hole had grown during the past 24 hours.
Cameron, how are you doing?
Matthews asked after a couple of hours' work.
It's not looking good, but I think we might be able to get a simple message through. But we gotta be fast. We're going to lose in less than an hour. You want the honor? You're in charge now, after all.
So, while Cameron and Rikers went to check on Jenkins, Matthews went on to send the last living message we'd ever received from the crew.
Ground control, this is Matthews. The comms were sabotaged after Hollow.
After we'd listened to the message for a second time, the black void had appeared outside the window. The crew had gathered, hugging each other as they approached within mere meters of it.
This is it.
Rikers let out a panicked whisper.
Oh God!
With that, every ray of light, artificial or not, vanished from the station. A minute of yells and beeps followed as the crew scrambled to turn the lights back on, but based on everything they said, the systems hadn't gone down. The light was simply being consumed by the void. In many ways, the place acted like a black hole without affecting physical mass in any destructive way.
How are we still alive?
Rikers called out.
I don't know. Why aren't the lights working? Is the station dead?
Cameron asked.
It's not just the station. Look outside,
Matthews said with a horrified voice. Outside the window, there was nothing but infinite darkness, rid of any light. There was a strange tinge of blue just barely touching the surface of the station, but where it had come from, no one could say. The weird illumination created eerie outlines inside, allowing the crew to just move around without hitting the walls. Then, the fog of darkness started to fade, and the lights inside the station slowly came back to life as if the unseen force had just been removed. Once they'd secured the inside of the station, they all gathered at the window and just fell into deafening silence. I couldn't blame them, because the world that existed outside in the empty vacuum of space was unlike anything known to mankind. If I hadn't seen the footage myself, I never would have believed it. As the footage played, our offices received a call from the team running the salvage operation. They could confirm that the wreckage definitely belonged to the GSSS, but there were no traces of the astronauts anywhere in the mess. They had not returned with the station. Not knowing what to say, I just redirected my attention towards the still playing footage. Wherever the astronauts had ended up, none of us knew, but one thing was certain. The astronauts were no longer within our realm of reality. They were in a nightmare. I'll say it plain. The acquisition of Nazi Party member Werner von Braun was not the most heinous action NASA committed, not by a long shot. By the time I'm done here, you will not look up at the sky in the same way. I want to start off by offering an olive branch of trust. I'm not a former NASA employee, an astronaut, or some high-ranking government official on the loose. Those people don't have the time to share their findings or the wherewithal to do so. No, I'm a whistleblower, sharing this in plain sight where it can go unnoticed. A needle in a needle pit, if you will. By December of next year, it will officially be half a century since humanity has attempted to land more of our people on the surface of our lunar body. Between 1968 and 1972, we manned 6 missions, and a dozen amazing people have passed 250,000 miles. Since then, the highest we've gone is barely 400 miles, staying in a proverbial pocket. Do you ever wonder why that's the case? I started looking into this when a large amount of conversations during the lead-up to the half-century anniversary of our lunar landing were met with evasive and awkward answers. Yes, we know NASA had received less than stellar funding over the years, but there's obviously more to it than that. Every time I'd get an interview with a cosmonaut, a roadblock would be put in my way.
Mr. can't see you right now. He's got a hip surgery planned and needs to focus on his recovery.
Roadblock after roadblock. Nobody wanted to talk to me, and every forum was littered with idiots, weirdos, and conspiracy theory nuts who were convinced of superfluous tall tales about the moon. These idiots never got a degree, did any proper unbiased research, or went out of their mother's tinfoil-laden basement. They had no clue. But I was objective. I'd paid my dues reporting on scientific achievements and had always prided myself on being able to focus on the truth, not the circumstantial. Anyone with half a brain could sense something is wrong when they look up at that lunar body. The pale, faceless orb gazing down at us night after night. It gets worse when you remember it's never really gone during the day, that the pale blue sky can only hold it back for so long before it rips through the thin veneer of safety and looms overhead. Good thing it can't watch me where I am, in the safe house. Sometimes I hear groaning outside, pleading, perhaps. They still want to communicate. To make me look. I digress. I was persistent and called in some favors to get access to archived and classified documents highlighting the space race, expeditions to the moon, and lost cosmonauts. For anyone not familiar with the original term, it was used as a way to catalog astronauts sent into space by the Soviets, but their existence was never acknowledged by the Russian government in any way. It details many things, horrible things, but key among them is one word that stood out when referring to the lost cosmonauts: communication. A transponder developed by the Soviets somehow still worked in the hours following a critical error that would leave a cosmonaut in peril, and luckily for all of you, I still have the audio intact. 28th of May, 1967. Project Overseer, Dr. Vitali. Cosmonaut, Colonel Ellen.
Colonel Ellen, do you copy? Can you hear me?
No response. Dr. Vitali repeats the question 3 more times before a response is brought back.
Yes. Doctor, I can confirm I hear you. I was unsure if it was you. The voices, they can sometimes lie.
Clarify.
A short response, this time suspected hesitance on Ellen's part due to slight stammer.
It is this darkness. It lies to you. It makes all voices seem like they are putting on an act, trying to gain trust before hurting you badly. It tells me to pull back the curtain, but I refuse.
I do not understand. How can there be voices where you are?
I do not want anyone from home to understand. You are still in the fog. It is to be expected. I am here to protect that sanctity. It is my job as a cosmonaut. For all of you.
For the motherland?
No. For all of you.
Let's review from earlier. Your mission to Luna was successful. You'd landed and were due for takeoff. Said you needed fixing of the controls on Morosa 4 before a navigational issue caused a complete failure of power.
Yes.
And you have reported no way of returning home.
Yes.
Comrade, forgive the bluntness, but you do not seem to be concerned about this. Are you not worried of death? You have been up there for 40 hours. We estimate you will be dead in another day, maybe slightly more. We cannot reach you in time.
There is a longer than usual pause. A small scratching sound can be heard.
Doctor, you are a far more intelligent man than I, and I have things I wish to know before, well, you know. So I wish to ask you 3 questions before our time is up. I will provide any information you require in return.
Of course. What do you see around you? Anything of note?
Nothing. Darkness. Pure, welcoming darkness. Doctor, do you believe in God?
I know there is much talk of one. Whether they exist, I do not know. How are you feeling? Is there anything you can tell us?
I feel fulfilled. I am protecting. The voices keep trying to make me pull back the curtain, but I am strong. I cannot tell you anything you do not already know. The rest, I could not if I tried. Doctor, do you believe in people?
Of course, Ellen. We are strongest together. Greatness comes from perseverance and from our collective vision. Why?
Fervent laughter ripples through the transmitter. It does not match the vocal patterns of Colonel Ellen.
Comrade, what was that? Are you well?
Yeah, that was one of the voices. They found your answer amusing. Vitali, do you want to see what's behind the curtain? Is your desire to make the motherland strongest worth losing your soul?
There is a long pause. Heated discussion between Dr. Vitali and his superiors. They argue as whispering can be heard from Ellen's side.
What kind of question is that, Ellen? You have limited time and resources, yet you waste it with such strange questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Doctor. The time up here, the silence, the darkness, it is not meant for mortal men. My wife, my son, please pass them a message. It may be the most important message I'll ever send.
Of course. What is it?
Another long pause. This time, soft weeping can be heard from Ellen's microphone as a low humming grows louder in the background. His voice drops to a whisper.
Komarov died screaming and burning, but at least he was embraced by the earth. I will not get the chance. Tell Masha. Tell my boy, Isaac. Don't look up at the moon.
Transmission concluded. Further attempts to reach Colonel Ellen were unsuccessful, and he was presumed dead on May 30th, 1967. This, on its own, is disturbing. It's been posited before that insanity can come in prolonged darkness and silences. Imagine looking all around you, a desolate rock with darkness stretching in every direction. The only piece of hope is a colorful orb that you will never get to see again. But it doesn't end there. This is simply the prelude to what they found. Something is calling to me from outside of the bunker, but it's a clear night tonight. I know better. Nothing more to do right now than carry on, right? The Soviets would launch a final expedition on August 12, 1971. A reconnaissance job involving 3 astronauts would scope out Ellen's final location and see what they could find. The space race now long over and interest dwindling, it was hoped that a definitive find would help boost funding and establish Soviet dominance. As for the audio, I'll pick things up from the first hour following a successful landing and beginning their search. August 13th, 1971. Project Overseer, Dr. Vitali. Cosmonauts. Commander Abramovich, Pilot Vatic, and Science Pilot Semenov.
Commander Abramovich checking in. Making our way to Colonel Ellen's last known coordinates. ETA 3 hours. Semenov says he sees something and wants to check it out first. Understood. Keep your wits about you, Ilya. It is unknown territory once you reach his spot.
There is a short discussion, and Abramovich comes back confused.
Doctor, you said Colonel Allen's ship malfunctioned with no way to return, yes?
That's correct, Commander. Is there an issue?
Yes, Semenov has looked at the ship. The damage done to it was man-made. There are several large dents on the outside, and the panel was forcibly ripped.
Muffled murmuring from Vitaly's side continues for a couple of minutes. Abramovich clearly concerned.
Doctor?
It has been noted. Perhaps more answers lay with his corpse. Collect what samples you need and head to his last known coordinates. Out.
3 hours, 18 minutes pass before correspondence begins again.
We have arrived at Ellen's last known location. No sign of him. And we can see the Terminator, the line between the light and the dark side of the moon, about a kilometer from our position. Vatic wants to scope it out.
Head for the Terminator, but be wary.
Oh my god. Doctor, Semenov says he can see a cave entrance right by the Terminator. I'm moving in for a closer look.
If this is true, this could be the greatest find in human history, comrade. But keep sight for Ellen's body. That is still priority.
There is a long pause, and when Abramovich speaks, his voice is shaking.
We found him. Requesting permission to evacuate immediately.
Denied. Why would you leave without exploring his cave? What is going on, Commander? Report.
Semenov can be heard trying to calm down Vatic, who is having a panic attack.
Colonel Allen is in a small hole that was made by extreme force. His body has been crushed, hands are mangled, and his visor has been destroyed. His face... Oh, God. Pieces of it are missing. Something chewed off his cheeks and lips. Requesting permission to evacuate immediately, Doctor.
You are not seriously suggesting there is something up there, are you, Commander? Listen to yourself. You're experiencing the same sickness as Ellen. The sight of a corpse is simply making you delirious.
Doctor, all three of us are seeing the same thing.
Enough. Leave him where he lays. We will discuss this soon. Explore the cave. This is too important to find to back out now. The last of our funding went into this project, and we will not leave empty-handed. Do you hear me?
Vitaly smacks the desk, and the mic booms. There is a short pause.
Confirmed. Moving to explore.
There is silence for 5 minutes as the group maneuvers the cave opening.
The cave itself appears natural, but the incline goes down and there seems to be some stronger gravity. There's some rudimentary steps. Man-made? Or some kind of creature, maybe. It goes down for a decent degree. We'll update when we see the bottom.
I want photos of everything, Abramovich. Make sure that Vatic picks himself up and helps Semenov.
Heavy breathing comes through 7 minutes later, and when Abramovich speaks, he is exacerbated.
We found a central room. Several basic archways leading further on. But we're in a makeshift command room, from my best guess. Vatic thinks that through the route we took, we've gone under the Terminator, dividing the light and the dark. Now we're firmly underneath the dark side of the moon. He thinks... Doctor, he thinks we're in front of shutters. There's a button in front of us. Semenov is begging us to go back. I think we should listen.
Push it.
But sir...
You will not dishonor our motherland with your hesitance. We are on the cusp of greatness. Push it.
Abramovich pushes the button, and the sound of the shutters rising fills the audio. Within 60 seconds, screaming follows. A heavy thud and the sound of glass breaking cut through the static before Abramovich can be heard panting.
Oh my god. It's a viewing port.
Where are pilots Vatic and Semenov? What is going on?
It's a viewing port. It looks out on... No.
Abramovich is still panting, assumedly going back up the stairs and on the verge of tears, a mixture of crying and manic laughter. Vitaly is undeterred, but clear stress in his tone.
Commander, I need a report. Pull yourself together.
When we looked out, Semenov started yelping, scratching at his visor. When that didn't work, he volleyed his head into Vatic's until the visor cracked. He continued while I got away. I didn't look for as long as either of them did, but I saw enough. It looked out at... Oh my god, my fucking god in heaven, what are we? Where are we? Is this a zoo?
Doctor, what did you not tell us? I do not understand. What are you saying, Commander? You lying fucking pig! You fat sack of shit! You knew there was something here! You sent us out into the night just like Ellen, didn't you? You old fuck! Sending the young to do ridiculous men like you could never do!
Abramovich's tirade continues for several minutes, words and behavior he had never exhibited in his psych evaluation coming out. Vitaly sounds genuinely unsettled by some of the things he's saying.
Commander, we only had an idea of what was there. We did not know for sure. We still do not know. You haven't told us. Please, for the motherland, for those we've lost, tell me what you saw.
The angry shouting stops and a low rumble permeates through the transmission. Abramovich laughs and cries. It is hard to distinguish which is dominant.
What is waiting for us? What are they watching for? There's a guardian here. It was asleep until Ellen woke it up by getting too close. It wants to make sure we never found out the truth. Oh, God. I'll never see my family again. My home.
The rumble begins to cause crackling in the audio, and for a moment, another voice comes through. It's Colonel Ellen's.
The darkness is good, safe, comforting. We do not need to see what is behind the curtain, behind the fog. Do not look at the moon.
For the first time, Vitaly is emotionally distraught. He is shaking, and his lip quivers as he manages to utter one word.
Why? It's a terrarium. And something is watching us.
Transmission ended. Several days after this, Vitaly was found dead in his home from a self-induced gunshot wound, a telescope still propped up by his window. A simple note by his bedside said, "It blinked, and in that moment, I glimpsed madness." In January 1975, an event would occur that would encourage all involved parties to unilaterally agree that the moon should never be visited again. Various excuses of lack of funding, interest, resources, and so forth have been put forward. All have validity in them, but they hide the truth. The reason I'm telling you all now, the reason I'm in my bunker and will stay here until the danger passes, I don't even know how long it's been. Much like the cosmonauts, I'm in my own void, disconnected from light and other contact. The voices I create are the only company I have. Maybe that's how Ellen felt when he realized what secrets were kept here and how important it was that he never took them back home. Perhaps anyone who stares at it for too long on unguarded nights is vulnerable. It brings with it an ugly glow, its secrets laid a little too bare for normal minds to grapple with, encouraging them silently to behave unusually, like an experiment. Which is apt when you consider the words of Abramovich and Ellen together, the statement and the question.
It's a terrarium, and something is watching us.
Do you want to see what's behind the curtain?
We looked behind the curtain. I don't know exactly what they saw, but with every supermoon, it gets a little bit closer. And now it knows we're aware of it. There isn't meant to be a supermoon out tonight, but something is looming overhead, speaking to people. Please, don't look at it. You don't want to know what's looking back. Proxima Centauri is a low-mass star that is part of the southern Centaurus constellation. The star is 4.24 light-years away from Earth. If you had a powerful enough laser, it would take the beam of light 4.24 years to get to the star. When you look up at the star, you are actually perceiving it as it was 4 years ago. The current fastest-moving object, made by man, is the original Voyager probe. It is traveling over 35,000 miles per hour, and even at such an extreme velocity, it would take thousands of years to reach the star. The only practical way to get there is via faster-than-light travel, or FTL for short. According to Einstein, a fundamental rule of the universe is nothing but light itself can go that fast. The year was 2037, and that was the year we broke that rule. But at what cost? My name is James Anderson. I've been in the Air Force for 15 years, and it's always been said I was the best man they ever had. 2 years ago, I got an invitation from NASA to take part in a groundbreaking project. NASA was always a dream of mine. As a boy, I had always dressed up as an astronaut for Halloween and read basically all of the books on them and the history of spaceflight. Joining the Air Force was the next best thing, and I ended up enjoying it a lot. I was stationed at Edwards Air Force Base as a test pilot for experimental fighters. The director of the project went by the name Dr. Robert Butler. Robert was a tall, ginger man with a brain that would make even Einstein envious. Robert was the person who personally invited me to partake in his project. I accepted almost instantly when he called, and we set up a meeting to discuss details. The meeting place was a nondescript office building in the middle of Bethesda, Maryland. Robert's office was probably the cleanest room I'd ever been in. He had a huge mahogany desk with a computer monitor that spanned almost half the desk on the corner. Behind him was a bookshelf full of books and miniature model aircraft. A pleasant autumn aroma filled the air from the incense he had burning on the other side of the room. Robert sat me down with a handshake and started.
Hello, James. Thank you for meeting with me today. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to explore the opportunities in front of me.
I responded eagerly.
Let's get the formalities out of the way so we can get down to business. I need you to sign a non-disclosure agreement, as this project is classified, top secret.
Robert slid me a thick document. As I suspected, it was the aforementioned agreement. I had signed thousands of these in the past, so I knew the drill. It basically said that if you discussed the project with anyone outside its scope, it was considered treason. I promptly signed the document with the expensive fountain pen he had on his desk, half expecting him to leap out of his seat, telling me it was a display piece only. He didn't. Passing the documents back to him and returning the pen, I thanked him and asked,
So, what is this groundbreaking project you speak about? Are you familiar with the theoretical physicist Miguel Alcubierre?
Robert asked with a curious expression.
I have read about him. He theorized a way to travel faster than light, but that theory was disproved a long time ago,
I retorted. Robert sat back in his chair and went on.
What if I told you we recently revised his work and put it into practice?
Another question popped into my mind.
Miguel's FTL engine required significant power to function. Nothing in the world can create that much energy. Yes, James, legitimate question. The scientists at the CERN Large Hadron Collider have been able to find a way to produce large amounts of antimatter. We have produced enough for a trip to Proxima Centauri and back with a little extra,
he answered.
So you've built a ship?
I asked.
Yes, we're calling it the Trieste, after the submersible piloted by Jacques Picard that dove into the deepest depths of the ocean. It seemed the most appropriate,
Robert replied. I was humbled to be a part of something so much bigger than myself. I would have a chance to shape the future of mankind and affect many generations ahead of me. My heart started beating rapidly as I inquired,
How fast does it go? According to our calculations, the Trieste has a max velocity of 32.47 times the speed of light, and you're going to be her pilot,
he answered, as if waiting for this question the whole time. Before I could ask the date of the flight, he handed me a contract that outlined the whole project. Upon signing the contract, Robert set me up with living accommodations and held out his hand. I shook it and left to move into the apartment he provided for me. After I settled in for a week, Robert invited me back to a spacious conference room to meet the others who would join me on the pioneering flight. Robert called 4 people into a line, each at the top of their respective fields and eager to change history. The first I was introduced to was engineer Dr. Pravina Cook. Pravina designed and helped construct the reactor and FTL drive. She was a shorter woman, maybe just over 5 feet, with long dark hair, in her 30s. What she lacked in height, she makes up for in intelligence. The next person I was introduced to was Dr. Haruto Moon. Dr. Moon was a medical doctor. He was tall, with short hair and a suit. Haruto was recently in the running to become Surgeon General, so NASA jumped at the opportunity to invite him. Then I met the chief scientist, Dr. Elizabeth Murphy. Elizabeth was one of the most beautiful women I've ever set my eyes upon. Her eyes were like diamonds. My gaze was transfixed on her smiling face before the man next to her cleared his throat. I snapped out of it and shook her hand, and his. The man was the commanding officer of the Trieste, Colonel Edward Thomas. Thomas didn't look anything like the colonels I've worked with over the years. He was short and thin, so not very intimidating. I showed him proper respect nonetheless. Before our handshake was finished, he leaned down to my ear and whispered,
I saw how you looked at Elizabeth. That's not what this mission is about. So if you would kindly keep your dick in your pants, this will all go over smoothly.
I nodded before joining him in the line. Robert handed us each a glass of champagne and gave a toast.
To New Horizons.
We all clinked our glasses and socialized. The next day was orientation. We all met in the same conference room. It was that day I finally got to see the Trieste. Although it was only a render on the wall, it looked like I was looking at the real thing. At the front of the craft was a large spherical command structure, probably where we controlled everything. Behind the sphere was what looked like a communications array. Then there was the reactor, sandwiched between two vast rings. The rings were the main component of the FTL drive. Behind that, at the direct aft of the ship, were the main engines for standard propulsion. Flanking the reactor were two cylindrical tanks for the fuel. One had antimatter, and the other tank contained matter. Those two substances emit vast amounts of energy when combined. The reactor controlled that and converted it to energy. Robert began by explaining why he chose Proxima Centauri.
As you may already know, Proxima Centauri is the closest star to Earth other than the Sun. This makes it an excellent candidate for this project. That's not the only reason we chose it, though. For a little over 40 years, that star has been emitting bursts of ultra-high energy radio waves. When analyzed, the signal is random in nature, basically bursts of static.
Don't stars emit all kinds of waves? I questioned.
Yes, James, you are correct. The remarkable thing about these ones is they happen every hour on the dot. If that wasn't strange enough, every burst is completely identical.
The room fell silent as everyone was in a state of shock. Robert chuckled.
That was my exact reaction. Your task is to travel to the star and use the equipment you bring along to study it and find out what causes the signals.
I smiled when I saw the joy on Elizabeth's face. Stars were her area of study. Robert began answering more questions we had. Some important particulars stood out to me. The Trieste is still under construction in orbit. It will take 1.5 months to reach the star at max speed, and we are scheduled to depart in 1 year after vigorous training. Our orientation ended, and we went home. NASA put my body to its extreme upper limit over that year. I had never been tested like that, not even during my time in the Air Force. In one of the simulations, they put me in a chair attached to a spinner that spun incredibly fast to simulate G-forces. Another time, I was put in a chamber for several hours under high atmospheric pressure to see how I responded to change. After many tests like this, my shipmates and I were ready to go. Launch day had arrived. This was a top-secret mission, so the trip to the Soyuz rocket that would take us up was oddly void of reporters. I didn't have anyone to say bye to, which was one of the reasons I was selected, as there was every chance the ship could just explode. The Soyuz rumbled to life as it violently carried us up. I had never been so uncomfortable in such a comfortable seat. Eventually, the rumbling stopped, and I felt weightless. Moments later, Elizabeth screamed,
Look!
I looked out the window. Before me was the Trieste in all her magnificence. It was surrounded by the scaffolding used to help in the construction. The capsule docked with the ship, and we boarded. Before me was the command center and the finest technology that humanity had to offer. At the front was a single grand console, my console, used for navigation. The ship, oddly, had gravity, although I didn't know how it worked. I hiked across the spacious room to my console so I could examine it. To my left was a small joystick like you'd find on an arcade cabinet. It was used to control the thrusters that steered the ship. There was a camera system there so I could see where we were going. Directly in front of me was an extensive celestial map so I could see where we were and plot courses. Overlaying the map were the controls for the FTL drive, which were simple. Pravina handled the complicated aspects naturally. Finally, to my right was a simple throttle for the main engines and a multifunction display for factors like power levels and velocity. Colonel Thomas said,
"All right, everyone, to your stations."
Pravina and Elizabeth took their stations on either side of me. Elizabeth's station allowed full access to the sensors and scanners installed on the ship, which she used to study Proxima Centauri. We spent a couple of hours preparing as the scaffolding around the ship was taken away. Robert called over the radio.
"All right, everything looks good from our end. Proceed whenever you're ready."
"Thank you, Robert. We will contact you when we are in position to go light speed," replied the colonel.
"James, take us out."
I tapped on my console, firing up the engines, and the ship gained speed. We could not perceive it, though, due to the artificial gravity. The ship needed to be far away from Earth in case of a disaster. On one camera, it gave me a view behind the ship, and the Earth was visibly getting smaller. Eventually, we got out of range. I cut the engines and let the Trieste coast.
"We're in position, sir,"
I informed Thomas. He relayed the information to control.
"This is it, people. Charge the rings, James,"
he instructed. I started the charge sequence, and the ship began to hum as the rings roared to life. Looking at the readout, I read 2 minutes to charge.
2 minutes to charge.
There was an atmosphere of anxiety and excitement. My panels turned green as the coils finished charging. The colonel knew this and had a seat. After the click from his harness, he addressed the crew.
"Whatever happens, you've all done this country proud. James, engage."
I had the biggest smile on my face as I nodded and did as instructed. We heard a loud burst of energy. Colors dazzled our eyes as we gazed out the front window. What followed was unnerving silence. I came to my senses and studied the panel in front of me.
"Holding steady at 24.5 C. We're stable,"
I exclaimed. A wave of relief washed over all of us before we started celebrating. What I saw out of the window is hard to explain. It was like we were flying through a blue tunnel of light. Pravina promptly checked the drive for any issues. She found none. We all congregated in the mess area for a meal while Dr. Moon examined himself and the rest of us for any negative effects of our transition to light speed. To his amazement, we all looked perfectly healthy. Dinner was disgusting freeze-dried chicken, or what looked like chicken and tasted like rubber. Despite the horrible cuisine, we were all happy as could be. To us at the time, we just made history. It was the life goal of every human being. We were proud. Soon, it was time to sleep for the long trip. The pods were programmed to wake us up 5 hours before we reached Proxima Centauri. Pravina checked over the systems methodically before getting into her pod. She didn't want there to be any problems while we were sound asleep. As my pod closed, I felt claustrophobic before gently drifting into a deep slumber. I awoke seemingly minutes later to a blinding light. Dr. Moon and Elizabeth, with those beautiful eyes, were standing above me. She smiled, saying,
"We're here, James."
I slowly sat up and got out of my pod. The 2 other crewmates were awake as well. Dr. Moon gave me a pill to help me recover from the extended rest, and I got out of my pod. Thomas asked me where we were. The trudge to my console was a little awkward as it felt like I was learning to walk for the first time again. The console read an ETA of 4 hours, 13 minutes, and 53 seconds. I turned to Dr. Moon.
"I thought we were supposed to wake at 5 hours, not 4 1/4. "You're right. We had a little trouble with your pod. It wouldn't open,"
he replied with a concerned expression. The crew and I spent the remaining 4 hours checking systems and getting food in our bodies. It was fish this time, equally rubbery as the chicken. Eventually, it came time to shut off the engines as we had arrived. There was a blinding light out the window. I was looking at another star. It just sunk in, the gravity of what we had just accomplished. I don't think I was the only one with that feeling. Thomas yelled an instruction.
"Bring us into orbit of the star, James."
With a permanent smile on my face, I acknowledged and used my console to fire up the engines and put us into orbit.
"Are we able to filter out all the blinding light?"
Thomas asked. Elizabeth spoke up.
The window has one. I'll activate it.
My heart hit the deck with an audible thud when she activated the filter. I observed the star being covered in green, vine-like structures. It almost seemed organic. Proxima Centauri looked alive. It was visibly throbbing. I was terrified at the sight. "What the hell? That's not what a star is supposed to look like," Thomas said, shocked. Elizabeth tapped her panel with determination. She concluded with the spectrographic analysis that the star was indeed organic. There was nothing in her analysis that pointed to it being a star of any classification other than the blinding light that it emitted. How could we not have seen this with our instruments from Earth? I concluded it was somehow able to trick them from the vast distance. Elizabeth noted with a puzzled expression,
"I don't understand how this is possible."
"How long until the next radio burst?"
5 minutes.
She replied as she checked her panel. As we waited, I was a nervous wreck. 5 minutes came, and the radio pulse did as well. I felt a slight tingling sensation, but it was harmless. We were monitoring the signal, and it was the same as previously recorded pulses, according to Elizabeth. "What do you make of all this, Dr. Moon?" the colonel asked without diverting his gaze. Moon didn't respond. I could hear soft, high-pitched wheezing coming from his direction. The colonel noticed too and turned around. Dr. Moon was completely motionless. Assuming he was just daydreaming, Thompson said, "Dr. Moon!" What happened next was the most disturbing, frightening thing I've ever witnessed. That was saying something coming from a soldier like myself. Moon started convulsing violently before slowly changing into something. His arms, his legs, his fingers, his toes and neck all grew to double their length. Sharp teeth descended from his gums, and existing teeth broke into sharp points. His jaw disconnected from his skull, giving him a gaping, terrifying maw. One of the panels behind him gave a reflected view of his back. His back split apart, exposing his spine with each vertebrae having long, jagged spikes protruding from them. The same sort of spikes were also protruding from all the joints of his body. His skin turned a dark green color and was ripping apart, exposing bone and a powerful muscular structure. There was nothing recognizable left. I sprinted at Elizabeth and grabbed her arm as we raced to safety. Pravina followed, but Colonel Thomas, rest his soul, wasn't so lucky. Moon, or what we thought was Moon, lunged at him with a high-pitched, unnatural screech, thrusting both arms into the colonel's chest, aided by the spikes that grew on his knuckles. Thomas didn't make a sound, just went limp, with his arms dangling below him. His motionless body was lifted off the ground. I winced with horror. There was an explosion of blood and gore as the creature separated its arms, ripping the already deceased Colonel Thomas in half. His blood-soaked insides were scattered all over the room. In all my years of military service, I'd never seen anything even remotely more disturbing. With no time to mourn our fallen comrade, we moved into the mess hall and closed the door, locking it. The two girls were sobbing. None of us wanted to talk about what just happened or what caused it. Pravina noted, still sobbing,
"We need to kill it."
Nobody ever thought to pack weapons on this ship, as it was a mission of exploration, and this occurrence would never show up in any manual. The three of us collected ourselves, and I cracked open the door. Moon was pacing around the room and noticed me. He produced another loud screech and charged at me. I got back inside just in time, and he started banging on the door relentlessly. "Try and find something I can use as a weapon," I said frantically.
"We may not need one. The main airlock is the room with it. There's a console in the communications room opposite this door that can open it,"
Pravina said, still shaking with fear. I opened the door, and the creature was in the middle of the room, standing above the colonel as if it was admiring its kill. I threw a piece of metal past it, and the creature jumped at where it hit the ground. I gathered up all of the strength and determination I could muster and bolted for the communications room. The creature saw me and got within inches, but I made it and sealed the door behind me. Moon, as if he knew what was about to happen, pounded much louder than before, almost desperate. I used the auxiliary console to increase the pressure and blow out the airlock. The environment outside the door sounded like a wind tunnel. The pounding ceased. I could hear it frantically claw at the ground before it flew out helplessly. I resealed the airlock and pressurized it. Upon opening the door, both the creature and the colonel were gone, with deep claw marks in the ground and around the airlock. To my horror, I looked up and it had completely trashed the command deck. All the consoles were destroyed with no way to use them. We were dead in the water with no way to control the ship. They both took on my shocked face when presented with the carnage. "Can we activate the drive from the reactor room?" I asked Pravina.
Yes, but we would have no navigational control.
She replied skeptically. With haste, we made our way to the reactor control room. The room was dissimilar from the rest of the ship. It had an industrial design. Pravina did her magic to try and charge the rings before another burst. There was no way to know which one of us would change into that thing. Her fingers tapped away at an inhuman pace. She froze.
No!
What? Elizabeth and I responded in unison.
The rings aren't charging. The creature must have hit one when he flew out of the airlock,
She said with a defeated look on her face. I felt as if the entire universe was trying to kill us. The three of us went to a window. We were shocked to discover that there was a deep gash on the side of one of the rings. That meant the only chance we had was the main engines. We could get far enough away and try to fix the rings with a spacewalk. We had no way of knowing how far away the pulse had an effect and wasted no time starting them up from the reactor room. Pravina put all available power through the engines, including the power from life support. 30 minutes later, we were going fast enough that I could perceive the organic star drifting away slowly. There was 15 minutes until the next burst. The three of us took shelter with nothing left to do and separated ourselves with doors between us, just in case we were not far away from the star. The engines were still going. We were keeping in constant contact using the intercom system. Elizabeth monitored for the burst. The three of us had never been so scared in our lives, as we now knew what was potentially about to happen. Our fate was inevitable. The burst came and went. The two started sobbing again. As far as I could tell at the moment, we were all safe. I broke down with relief, as it was one issue we no longer had to deal with. One of them stopped crying. "Elizabeth?" I called out.
I'm here, James! I'm here!
Elizabeth cried. That same screech came out of the speakers. It was so loud, my eardrums were in searing pain. I called for Pravina. It was already too late for her. She was in the pod room. Elizabeth was the only thing on my mind at that time. I had a clear path to get to her. She was in the communications room. I went over and joined her there. We had an hour left. The two of us knew there was no chance of repairing the ring without Pravina. Pravina started pounding on her door as the transformation was complete. I'm recording this from that room with Elizabeth. I don't know if my story will reach Earth. Even if it did, it would be too late for us, as it takes a whole 4 years with light-speed communications. We are just too far away. Pravina just busted out of the pod room. She knows where we are and has been trying to get to us. I don't know how long we have left. I don't know what will get us first, Pravina or the next burst. All I know is I don't want to die in either fashion. I'm contemplating evacuating the air from this room. Elizabeth agreed and started sobbing uncontrollably. The air is getting thin. Humans can survive about 6 minutes without oxygen. It is an agonizing death, but it is far better than the alternative. I do not regret going on this mission. Neither does Elizabeth. We are fortunate to make our world proud. If you are hearing this message, please stay away from Proxima Centauri. It is not what it seems. The room is now completely void of oxygen. Elizabeth has gone unconscious. I'm devastated, but I know I won't be that way for much longer. Only one thing left to do. Send. I handle extraterrestrial objects at NASA. Up until now, I've been analyzing various rocks and materials from space, with my next big project being analyzing soil samples from Mars. Over the years, the excitement of handling items from space had worn off, and my job was reduced to a simple routine I had to set up for examining and recording the features of everything that was brought to my desk. Recently, I was given a smooth piece of metal that had apparently been found floating in orbit by the folks over at the ISS. When I first examined this hunk of metal, I was intrigued by its seemingly man-made shape, like it was deliberately created by someone and launched into space. It was no bigger than a small, sleek laptop charging brick and had smooth, rounded corners like pebbles in a river. It was an interesting find, and I was a little excited to examine this object. I was surprised that it being man-made wasn't ruled out, because there's a very low chance that this device was naturally created. I was turning it over in my gloved hands when I first realized that it had a small slit on the left side. My heart rate began to quicken. Slipping a piece of paper into the slit caused the entire drive to start morphing. The metal began to melt away like chocolate and molded into a different shape entirely. Now, there was a simple circular hole on that side that, upon inspection, seemed to be endless, as I only saw a dark pit no matter how hard I looked inside. I backed away from the device as I realized that I was working with technology so advanced it was beyond our understanding of physics and chemistry itself. This needed to be taken to the higher-ups immediately. Somehow, through the whole process of getting this out of space and onto my desk, no one had realized that this metal exterior hid technological components inside. It also explained why this hadn't yet been taken away by shadowy government organizations. The device had stopped moving and lay still on my table as I stared at it. On one hand, I knew this was well beyond what I could deal with. On the other, a strange curiosity urged me to investigate it just a little further. Perhaps I could find out what it did. It took me hours to get beyond that development. Every time I pushed something through that hole in the side of the device, it would promptly begin to reshape again, until the hole closed in around the inserted object and matched exactly to its shape. It would then whir for a few moments, seeming like it was examining the object, and then spit it out completely, with the metal reshaping into the same original slit. I was getting more and more worried as time ticked. My face felt hot and my hands clammy. I was about to call my boss to hand this over to the higher-ups before I got in trouble when I got a crazy idea. After pushing everything from pens to metal rods into the hole, I decided to put in a simple USB-A connected cable into the hole. It was a random idea, possibly inspired by the fact that the last thing I had in my drawer was that cable, and it was the only thing I hadn't put into the device. As soon as I put the connector into the side of the device, it began to conform to its shape and whir once more. A loud beep filled my entire office. The machine didn't reject the cable and instead kept it inside. My heart began to beat in anticipation as I plugged the cable into my personal laptop. I jumped when the laptop identified the device as a hard drive. It was simply named GSA Drive. I opened the drive, and inside I found one file in a folder. The file was a simple PNG image which depicted the logo of GSA, and under it revealed what the acronym stood for: Global Space Agency. I didn't have time to ponder over the existence of this organization, and instead backed out of the image to click into the other folder, fueled by curiosity. It took me a moment to register the size of that folder. The entire folder was 6,000 petabytes. I quickly called my boss and explained what I had found. He didn't seem to buy it, but promised he'd come as soon as possible and take the device off me. Somehow the fact that I was about to lose this device made me want to dig in just a little further before I gave it back. I knew I was digging my grave, but an urge to know what was inside had overtaken me. I clicked back and quickly checked the hard drive's capacity. 10,000 petabytes. My stomach twisted into knots as I realized that this small hard drive had a capacity more than the modern internet. Only curiosity lured me in and enticed me. My want to explore this drive overtook the growing fear and anxiety that was building up in the back of my mind. I should have handed the drive to the higher-ups and let them deal with it. Much of the folders inside the main folder contained thousands and thousands of files that were all unrecognizable file types. My computer was unable to open or process any of them, and as far as I knew, these file formats did not exist. I found more images of various devices, vehicles, and weapons that seemed impossible to build and defied the laws of matter. However, I didn't have to look far to find a folder titled Hear Me. Inside, I found an audio file that details a disturbing and horrific notion. It explains the existence of the drive and why it's here. I'll play the audio for you so you can hear it yourself. File name. Message from 2299. I don't know who you are or which timeline you exist in. I don't know what date it is for you, and I don't even know if you're a human. As you can see, this is a desperate attempt at making contact. The past needs to know of our mistakes so they can be avoided. Throughout time, humankind has learnt from history, but never from the future. This is, I guess, a learning opportunity to not go down the same path we went. During the year 2050, there was a second, you could call it an industrial revolution. I'm assuming you know of the Industrial Revolution since you have the technology to be hearing this message at all. This Industrial Revolution was a revolution of technology, a massive technological boom built up by the decades of innovation before it. It was a time in which different discoveries from the previous decade came together and allowed us to redefine our devices forever. Soon enough, self-driving cars were replaced by a network of teleportation hubs that broke you down to the very atoms and rebuilt you on the other side. Not to say there weren't accidents, but medicine had advanced to such a degree that death had become a concept of the past. Several thousands of people began to live as minds on humanoid robots in the first few years of this technology's development. Quantum computers were replaced by cybernetic chips. Our own buildings evolved into smart skyscrapers that extended to the brink of the atmosphere. We didn't even spare the oceans, as they soon filled up with skyscrapers and underwater cities. When humanity finished conquering the Earth and rid it of all its other life, they realized the mistakes they had made. Several countries began to destroy cities and build them underground instead to encourage a natural environment on the top. It wasn't climate change that killed life. No, that was realized ages ago. It was the rapid loss of habitat as the population extended beyond the Earth's holding capacity. The only animals and plants that were left were farming necessities that humanity needed. Unfortunately, they could not form a complete ecosystem, and so the environment continued to suffer and break with no solution in sight. So, humanity took to the stars. In a short span of 100 years, all of the planets in the solar system had been terraformed. From the hot desert of Mercury to the icy oceans of Jupiter's moons, people had found a way to live there. The populations continued to expand throughout those years, and somehow began to exceed the capacity of the entire galaxy. What many people didn't realize as they terraformed planet after planet is that they could not create life. They could not build the environment that they had destroyed back on Earth. I was one of the few self-proclaimed space explorers. Like the sea explorers back in the days Earth was Earth. Our job was to find more livable planets that could be terraformed quickly and efficiently. We didn't have the technology to terraform every planet, but planets like Mercury took a lot more time and energy to transform because, after all, we couldn't literally move the planet from its orbit. Given another century, though, I doubt we wouldn't be able to do it. Experimental wormhole technology had gone into development a couple of decades earlier. Space vessels with this form of transport built in were given to anybody who wished to explore space alone, millions of light years away from the closest human. These ships could construct wormholes to another given location in space and pass through them, skipping millions of light years of travel in the process. Just like that, humanity once again began expanding through the observable universe like cracks slowly forming in glass. We encountered no other life form throughout our exploration and believed we were truly alone, until I visited Croton 42A. The planet had deep blue seas and continents full of strange animals. They seemed to be early in their evolution, not yet intelligent. When my ship first landed on the planet, I quickly realized that the atmosphere matched that of the original Earth, rich in oxygen. The planet was an exact duplicate of Earth. In the vastness of the universe, statistics had created a similar planet, I was far, far away from the closest space station. There was no way for me to communicate my find. I didn't explore the planet any further, careful not to disturb the environment and avoid any other possible intelligent life forms that I had not yet seen. Instead, I collected samples from the area that my ship had landed in and promptly left, making sure I sterilized my entire spacesuit in the sterilization room. I took the samples back to the closest human settlement, and after that, news spread like wildfire. I became somewhat of a celebrity, a legendary space explorer who had found a utopia for the wealthiest of people, and had most importantly, found more life in the bleakness of space. It wasn't just me that went right back to the closest human settlement, though. Something had survived the sterilization chamber and came right back with me. It had spread across my entire spaceship and to every person I had contacted. It jumped from person to person and spread quickly. Throughout all these decades of innovation and advancement in technology, we had forgotten one thing. When humanity began to take over the planet, they also eradicated all bacteria and viruses, effectively making sure no one would ever get sick. Medicine advanced too quickly for its own good, and with this growth, it left a gaping hole in itself. A simple virus from a planet millions of light years away began to conquer us, just like we had done to the stars. Just like we had built large networks of heat and light energy converters around the stars, this disease began to surround us. In the first year, half of the entire human population died. The symptoms were simple. The patient's skin would begin to slowly turn blue as the days passed. When the skin had turned completely blue, it would shrivel before the entire body would be unable to hold water. The patient would die a sudden death from dehydration. Whole settlements collapsed into anarchy as people fought for food and resources. Military groups formed and attacked in mobs, stealing resources and food. Wars erupted across the intergalactic utopia humanity had created for themselves and brought buildings to the ground. Nothing could stop it from spreading. We didn't even know how it spread. It seemed to do it through all ways possible. Scientists studying patients began to die, and there was just no way to study the virus without becoming infected yourself. The wealthiest of people began to buy out expensive spaceships to quarantine in, but they were soon attacked as all order collapsed. For a few short months, the chaos and war lit up whole planets like fireworks in the sky. With our advanced weaponry, humans became desperate, animalistic versions of themselves, scrounging for supplies and food while all carrying the virus and transmitting it everywhere. Throughout all of this, I remained alive. I didn't show a single symptom, and somehow the virus had just passed through me. I took my ship and moved away from major human settlements to protect myself, while still listening in to broadcasts and messages from everyone. I watched digitally as entire human settlements went empty and infrastructure began to decay. The population had shrunk until it was confined to just one planet, Earth, the only planet that had not recorded a case of this virus. A small government had protected the planet amongst all the intergalactic chaos. The people on Earth thought that was the end of it, that they had somehow survived against all odds, and that it was up to them to rebuild the intergalactic empire that we had formed. A mystery case stomped on those ambitions and eradicated the rest of the population. After days of not getting a single broadcast or message, I realized that I was possibly the last of my kind in the empty, hopeless vacuum of space. I visited the abandoned colonies, desperate to find a single human being other than myself, but all I found were the bodies that the virus had left behind in its wake. I have somehow not become infected yet. The virus had spared me and at the same time sentenced me to death in the loneliness of the stars. As this century ends and a new one starts, an entire era begins. A new era without humanity, an era in which all our settlements will begin to collapse into dust until there is no mark of us left in the universe. Sometimes I wonder, what if that's what had happened to all the other life? I returned to the planet that the virus had originated from and decided to spend the rest of my life there. Even after taking my spacesuit off and breathing in the sweet, fresh air, the virus won't infect me. I'm somehow the only one immune out of the trillions of people that succumb to this disease. Before I end my miserable existence, I've tasked my ship's AI to record and deliver this message on my ship's main hard drive. It will open a small wormhole and try to send this into the past, a technology that I have personally been working on myself ever since the whole human race went extinct. My ship's AI helped me greatly, and I was able to hopefully achieve what all of humanity hadn't yet: time travel. If you are hearing this message and the date is somewhere around the early 21st century, it means that my time-traveling wormhole succeeded and that I have long since died. Well, in your time, I don't even exist yet. Please, spread this message around as much as you can. Give it to everyone. Learn from our mistakes. Protect the planet. Take care of it. It is the only home we have in the deadly, inky black sea of stars. My eyes were brimmed with tears as I finished hearing the message. Deep down, I knew it was genuine. I told my boss I was joking with him and took the hard drive for myself. I'm sharing this message here before it's taken away and hidden. If it really is true, then it may be the only chance we have. My name is Dr. Stephen Ralston, researcher at the Martian University of Creven. What follows aren't really research notes as much as they are a way of keeping me sane. I need them to truly grasp the magnitude of our discoveries, to keep the order in my mind, if you will. For as long as historians could remember, humanity had been looking for their god, but to no avail. Despite several millennium of searching, no deity was ever found. This never became a real issue, though, until the late 22nd century, when we invented the ships needed to explore space outside of our own solar system. The telescopes required to truly peek far beyond the universe, and technology allowing us to drill deep into the Earth. Humanity had turned their eyes to the skies, and to the planetary depths to look for answers. Neither heaven nor hell was ever found, however. Throughout the 23rd century, the disappointment grew, and a new church rose. Their priests preach about a dead god, believing that ours had somehow died. The religion had its major breakthrough in 2267, and by 2300, they had already converted over a third of the people to this new belief. The necrotic church had more power than it could ever need and grew stronger every year. My story begins a good 20 years later, however, with me waking up for another day of research, aimed to find a definitive answer to the age-old question: where is God? I refuse to believe he died. August 24th, 2322 AD. I decided to visit the observatory today. My research had been stale these past few weeks, and I felt I could use some new insights. There's only so much one can learn from the history books, after all. It always strikes me as odd, though, whenever I talk to the scientists here, how we still have not discovered intelligent life. This in spite of our technological prowess and our planet-colonizing habits. I felt it would be a solace, though. I guess I just don't want to be alone. Probably goes for all of us. To be honest, I would already settle for a few ruins, some scriptures perhaps, anything but the animalistic species that dominate every habited planet we've come across. I digress. There actually was an exciting new discovery made, which my colleagues there told me about. They had discovered a new species of gaver-like creatures, albeit with much more flexibility in their claw-like fingers, deep in the bush forests of Titan Major. Apparently, the beasts had exhibited an irrational fear of the explorers, but that was not the strange part. Although the creatures, Vidin's Titan Arashiro, displayed no exceptional cognitive ability, they had somehow crafted numerous human-like statues out of the thin wood found there. The statues vary greatly in size, from a few inches to close to 10 feet, but apart from gender differences, they are almost exactly the same. I do not know what to make of it. Adam and Eve? Eden? I need some sleep. August 27th, 2322 AD. I received a message from Gerald as I woke up today. He urged me to call back right away. Apparently, he had been trying to reach my cell all night. After all those years, he still did not remember that I could not sleep with that thing turned on. Not that it mattered much these past few nights. My research will not let me sleep, and even if I do fall asleep, I have to face the nightmares. I will not be writing those down here, however, as it is best I just forget them. But I digress. Eager to catch up, I called Gerald during breakfast. I did not think too much of his calls during the night back then, for he had done so before. "Good morning, Dr. Starr. I hope you slept well," I began.
What? Are you alone?
He promptly interrupted me. Yes, I am."
Good. Well, Dr. Ralston, I have some good news for you,
he said, sounding like his old self again.
If they have not brainwashed you yet, of course.
"They do try," I laughed. "What news do you have?"
You should come back to Earth, Stephen. At least that church does not control everything here yet.
He explained to me how there was a whole community of like-minded scientists in Tokyo, some of them atheists. Gerald gave me a contact number of one of the Martian members. From what I understood, the scientists were split into two research groups. One branch aimed to find heaven or any sign of God in the galaxy. The other held on to the belief that God lived inside all of us. It is a shame. I know Gerald to be a firm believer of the latter, for it would be a pleasure to work together again. Searching the galaxy sounds like a much more exciting prospect, however. August 30th, 2322 AD. Church confiscates alien artifacts. Read the heading of the news website today. Can you believe that those priests actually did that? The first alien craftsmanship we ever found, and they are claiming it and probably burning it soon too. No scientists will be examining those wooden statues. On a more cheerful note, I finally met the other scientists Gerald had told me about. The Martian chapter operated in a state-of-the-art research facility on the crater plains near Creven. I was able to explore the entirety of it with chief researcher Dr. Havard as my guide. He explained to me that they had found several rich benefactors, mainly older religions, to take care of the financial aspect of their research. Most of the funding was used on the observatory, however, and it was magnificent. The telescopes were unlike anything I'd ever seen before, both in scale and effectivity. Furthermore, Dr. Havard assured me that those were not even the most advanced models they had. In the hallway stood a number of brand new telescopes, still wrapped in their packaging, and several parts of a legitimately giant one laid scattered across the floor. I also took the opportunity to ask him about the news I had heard today, though I wish I had not. "You heard the news today?" I asked, "about the church's latest confiscation." "Yes, I did." He nodded. "And I'm afraid there's even more to it than that. Come, walk with me." He led me through a series of highly secured doors into another wing of the research center that I had not yet seen. We entered a large chamber that was stacked to the brink with computers. There were huge touchscreens on both walls and at least a dozen engineers manning the technology. "This is what I like to call the war room," Dr. Havard said. "In here, we gather all the information we can on the necrotic church and their activities. Now, about today's news, we have reason to believe that they did not only confiscate the statues, but exterminated the whole species that crafted them as well." He spoke. "What? Who knows what could have been found out by studying those animals? These thoughts will not let me sleep. What could the church be planning?" September 10th, 2322 AD. The workload over the last few weeks had been enormous, and I had not had much time to write down my thoughts. These are turbulent times, but I will get to that later. Now, since I am one of the scientists at the facility without extensive prior knowledge of astronomy, Dr. Havard had me doing mostly paperwork. I had to check the planets that had already been discarded by the other researchers to make sure that they were nothing special. Check reports on the church in the war room, and listen to the incoming radio signals, or rather radio static, from outer space. Most of it was not that exciting, but it left me plenty of time to talk with the other scientists there and focus on my own research. It was not so bad at first, but then the church began tracking us down. To make matters worse, we could all follow it in the war room. We could see how the bastards were systematically hunting us all down, forcing us to slow our research and keep a low profile. I have to admit that I was, and still am, frightened. The facility itself is pretty secure, but the risk of getting caught in your own home grows day by day. It feels as if we are running out of time. With so many of my colleagues being captured, my workload increased immensely, and I even got to help with the telescopes. It was then that I was finally initiated in the true progress that the facility had already made. Something out there in the galaxy was moving, and we had no clue what it was. The only proof we had of its existence were our calculations, seeing the light had not even reached its part of the galaxy yet. But whatever it was, it had our whole facility confounded, as it did not seem to follow any of the laws centuries of scientific progress had come up with. 1. Our object does not move in a logical pattern and appears to be unaffected by gravity. 2. Our object seemingly pulls and releases other celestials in its vicinity at will, without any kind of foreseeable pattern. September 11th, 2322 AD. Those are not even the most disturbing things about whatever we found out there. I was not even supposed to be clued in about what follows, so perhaps I should not record it either, but I do not feel like I have a choice anymore. This is too much. Here is my attempt at transcribing my conversation with Dr. Havard, as he had called me into his office today. "Dr. Ralston, have a seat. Tea?" He greeted me. "Well, I don't mean to be blunt, but why did you call me in here? There's just so much work." "Ah, yes. You picked up on any signals yet?" He answered blankly. "Well," I began until my eyes met his. "Fear?" "There is a reason I called you in here, Stephen. Our numbers are dwindling, and seeing as how you've helped greatly over the last few weeks, you deserve to know." He sighed and handed me a file. It was about the galactic anomaly we had discovered. The calculations show that our object's gravitational pull is so strong, so very powerful, that it is affecting the orbit of this very planet, as well as every other one. What? But we are dealing with something far beyond what we thought was rationally possible. Beyond what we... Dr. Havard fell silent for a moment and then looked up and started whispering something of which I could only decipher the word life or alive. I was frightened already. It felt as if I just stood there for hours, not knowing what to do. The man simply stared at the ceiling with a creepy, blank stare. I had finally managed to open my mouth as he looked at me again. "We found God," he whispered. "We did." Isn't that a bit rash?" I answered, shivers running down my spine. "No, we did." His eyes were full of steely conviction. "And he knows. It's all in the file. How the light has stopped moving towards it ever since we discovered him. We still can't see further into that sector of space than we could 4 months ago. That can't be right." "It is. But there's more." He grabbed the file out of my hands and began flipping through the pages. "Here, at exactly 10:06 a.m. yesterday, his movements ceased being random." His eyes grew wide. "But he's coming. Our Lord's on his way, and we are not prepared." I must remain calm and focused. I must be calm and focused. I am calm and focused. I am so. Am I? September 12th, 2322 AD. As was to be expected, I barely slept tonight. In the morning I could not get up, though, and it was not until noon that I finally admit that I would not find the answers in my own home. So many questions kept rushing through my mind as I checked my email during breakfast. Surprisingly, Gerald had sent me a document overnight without any further information. Experiment TZ-2322-0518. Executed by Dr. Reynolds, Dr. Steyer, Dr. Colbrelli, and Dr. Zing. 9:30 a.m. Subject heavily sedated and strapped to operating table. Subject expects to receive a routine cosmetic procedure in order to ensure the experiment goes as planned. 9:41 a.m. Subject's cranium carved open and electrodes applied. Shocks are being applied at regular intervals. Subject displays no visible signs of stress or duress and appears to have entered the desired semi-comatose state. 10:18 a.m. Subject grunts and mumbles intelligibly. Intensity of the shocks is being amplified. 10:34 a.m. Subject's rambling loudens and twitching occurs. Shock strength is being ramped up again. Dr. Steyer's protest is denied. 11:06 a.m. Subject suddenly stops moving and goes silent. 11:13 a.m. Subject's heartbeat has dropped noticeably over the past few minutes to an astounding 7 BPM. 11:16 a.m. Subject's heartbeat drops below 1 BPM. Electrodes being turned even higher, nearing maximum output. 11:18 a.m. Subject starts moving, and I strongly feel that all experiment TZ-23220518 points towards us having found a way to an hypothesis that is supported by all previous TZ line experiments. I was not sure what to make of it. Why did Gerald choose to share this? It was interesting to finally read some of his research, but mostly everything was classified anyway. Not to mention that I had no clue what good such experiments could do in our search for the deity. It took a while for me to be able to leave the comfort of my home and head to work, at which point I was called by an unknown number. Reluctantly, I answered the call. Hello? Who is this? Steve, listen up. I don't have much time. Gerald? What? Did you read the file I sent you? Yes, but I'll be at Creven tomorrow night. You need to meet me at the Pelican on Desmond Square at exactly 8 p.m. Gerald, what the hell? 8 p.m., Steve. You have to be there. Gerald? Silence. What is going on? Any answer will do. Then, when my stressed-out self finally got to the research facility, there was no one there. Not a single soul. I carefully walked through the empty hallways as the lights were lit where I went. In my mind, there lurked something behind every corner I took. I checked my cell. No calls, no messages, nothing. Moreover, Dr. Havard would not answer his. I tried calling my other colleagues, but none of them picked up either. Strangely enough, however, most of the systems were still up and running. All of them were seemingly working towards identifying the entity rushing towards the Earth. I had trouble understanding the huge chunks of data most of the screens showed without Dr. Havard, though. There was one screen that did catch my eye. The big one in the center of the room. It showed the entity itself and the insane speed in which it was racing towards us. The thing was hidden in a black cloud and the images were not sharp, but I could see it nonetheless. I could see the dark tendrils protruding from the smoke and the thousands of eyes it seemed to have. This moon-sized monstrosity, it could not be. I fear for the others. I truly do. September 13th, 2322 AD. I stayed home today, despite the nightmares I battled all night. At this point, I felt that even the horrific imagery, the paralyzing fear, and even the auditory hallucinations my mind plagued me with were preferable to the outside world. We were all going to die horribly anyway, I figured. At least I would pass in the comfort of my home, though possibly insane. There was no point in denying it. This morning I had effectively lost it. Things bettered, however, and from 2 p.m. onward only minor hallucinations remained. I kept hearing a faint yelling, for example, and a deep, hushed voice calling out my name. Now, psychiatrists would probably not agree with my analysis, but I blame it on the lack of sleep. What was a lot more worrying was that I still had not heard anything from the research facility. Oh well, I figured I should try focusing on other things. I switched on the television to distract me for a while. The channel offered me a dozen different documentaries to pick from, and I picked one about the growth of London as the first multi-layered metropolis. Anything to keep my mind occupied. Why was the clock ticking so slowly? The documentary itself was not incredibly interesting. The host tries his best to give an exciting trip through the city, but everything seemed bleak and gloomy, and it had an effect on him as well. His demeanor grew more depressed and joyless by the minute. And that was not the only thing that changed, unfortunately. The people he passed no longer went on with their daily lives afterwards. They dropped whatever they were holding and watched with dark, hollow eyes. It was not long until Patrick realized this too. It would appear that some of the citizens here have taken a dislike towards foreigners, but I'm quite sure that... He paused. Oh, you are here. He spoke as his eyes turned black. They all began staring straight at me as more and more people entered the screen. What the hell is going on? Christ, save me. Save us all. Save us now. Why? I only remember switching off the television and running outside in a moment of primal fear. There is no memory of how I got to Desmond Square hours early, 4:37 p.m., but at least the voices are gone. Whatever it is that is haunting me, I'm sure that it will not strike me here with all those people around. One of them was Gerald. He was pale and thin, having lost at least 30 pounds, and he looked to be tired beyond belief. I had a feeling he would be early. You've always been curious, he said. Come, walk with me. I followed him as he walked towards the park. Did you read the notes I sent you? They're important, but horribly incomplete, as you could probably tell. I want to tell you what we found, because someone has to know. You are not going to make the research public? I asked him. They would never let us. My entire team is dead, Stephen. The church killed them all. Why? What did you find? They believe that we might have found God, Gerald said bitterly. Did you? I fear not, but believe me when I say that not a moment goes by that I hope we did. We found something, though, but you'll have to take my word for it, as all of our research has been destroyed. He left a dramatic pause for a while. We have discovered an entity that dwells within all of us, seeing what we see, hearing what we hear, and ever so slightly controlling what we do. We first made contact with it during the experiments I sent you. It would appear that the constant shocks we applied on our test subject had awakened it. We tried communicating with it, but soon our limbs were no longer our own. We were forced to kill the subject and report all of our findings to the necrotic church. All of this without our consent. He sighed and sat down with slouched shoulders. I don't even know if I choose to tell you this, or whether this all fits in this thing's master plan. We just sat there for a few minutes until I finally knew what to say. So, does the church think you found God? I doubt it. I think they just don't want our research to get public. Not even those lunatics could incorporate that in their beliefs. Imagine what it would do to them if God turned out to be alive and almost tangible. Then what can we... He grabbed me by the shoulders and stared straight into my eyes as panic reigned in his pupils. You must listen. Do you realize what we're dealing with here? Everything we've ever looked at, everything we've ever cared about might be a lie. He started talking faster and faster. The reality we breathe, that we think we live in, is warped, twisted beyond our comprehension. Gerald, listen to me. You need to calm down. We can't know, Stephen. We can't be sure anymore. What? What can't we know? What lurks beyond the edge of our perception? Gerald whispered with an empty look in his eyes. Gerald, snap out of it. Do not trust anything, Stephen. Gerald suddenly took a step back and reached inside his pocket to take out a small handgun. I remember yelling, "No!" like they do in movies. I remember the blood, the gunshot, and me running away. Gerald died today, and I have the feeling that he will not be the last. I do not know what is going on anymore. The hallucinations are gone for now, but I still cannot quite grasp what Gerald was telling me. What is even real anymore? Is there really something racing towards Earth? The television shows nothing but static anymore, or am I imagining things? I feel like a pawn, but whose game are we playing? September 14th, 2322 AD. It is becoming increasingly difficult to write in here, though those two burden me immensely through every hour that I fail to catch sleep. Not just because my dreams haunt me and break me through the horrors they make me watch. It is because I have been crying tonight, endlessly and almost violently. I witnessed my best friend's death. No, his murder, and I cannot deal with it. What brought him to do that, and why will these tears not stop? Are these tears, through the constant damaging of my notebook, being used to stop me from writing? Am I becoming as paranoid as Gerald? Do I really believe that there's something controlling us? I am fully aware that these are the words of a shaken, sleep-deprived, and traumatized man, but I still cannot bring myself to rip them out of this book. It is 3:15 a.m., and I am afraid to close my eyes. I must have fallen asleep eventually, because I do partially recall a dream I had. While some parts are vivid, others seem to have been oddly blurred out. Is there no place that I am safe? My dream began with me standing in the middle of a field, surrounded by a tall brick wall a few meters away from me. It was night, but I could see no stars. I took a few uneasy steps when the wall started shifting. Bricks were constantly being added on top, while others were removed just as fast. It was not long before holes began to appear in the wall, though, places where the bricks were disappearing too quickly to be replaced. At first I could see nothing but darkness through these holes, but then I began to notice the blackness. There was something out there removing those bricks and destroying my walls. A creature so very dark that it stood out like the brightest star in this otherwise starless night. I felt fear like never before as I slowly began to define its shape. Long, elongated arms made their way through and reached for me before scratching the walls in frustrated rage as I backed away again and again, my heart pounding in my chest. Suddenly, the limbs pulled back, and for a few heartbeats, everything was quiet again. The wall had stopped shifting as a prelude of something much, much worse. Something out there, outside of this little bit of shelter, was roaring. If it could even be called that. It placed two hands on the sides of the holes and started pushing. Long, bone-like fingers grabbed onto the wall, which was now clearly cracking. Its hands pushed the bricks out of the way as if it were simple specks of dust. It was only then that I finally got to see its face, greeting me with a terrifying smile that would befit a psychopath. It opened its mouth to reveal the void within, and I recall thinking that I should recognize that face before it all went black and I woke up, sweating and out of breath. I had woken up to laughter of several tall shadow-like figures standing around my bed. I tried to scream, but they just kept staring. I tried to open my eyes, but nothing was changing. That's when it all became a blur. I remember wondering why they were not moving, but I woke up, sitting outside on my balcony. My legs were hurting, and the pain quickly urged me to stand up. Somehow I had been sitting in the lotus position, which I had not been able to do since I was 14 or so. Are there any words for my confusion? Am I really still sane? I forced myself to eat something, but practically had to force the omelet down my throat. The dream still spooked me, and I felt like my mind had finally been damaged beyond repair. My continuing headache only served to reinforce that statement, and was as if lightning split my forehead, as if my head was desperately trying to adopt my newfound madness. Although one thing was crystal clear. I could not let it consume me. The visions, the dreams, the disappearances, Gerald's suicide, all of it had started with the discovery of Dr. Havard's God. Not to mention the discoveries that Gerald's team had made, or had they just been crazy talk? I had to connect the dots. There had to be some sort of reasoning behind all of this. Reluctantly, I decided to go back to the research facility to gather more information, all the while wondering why I was not more shocked by everything that had happened. I just felt numb. Arriving at the facility was no boon for my sanity either. Strangely enough, everyone was there again, and I was greeted by one very excited researcher, Dr. Stone, according to her name tag, who talked to me with seemingly limitless respect. She told me that Dr. Havard was looking for me, and other researchers gathered around as she was speaking. They all held their distance, and all of them, even ones I had worked with before, stared at me with reverence in their eyes. I felt confused and oddly self-conscious. Hey, guys, I hope the research is still going strong, I said, and they seemed satisfied with that. I tried to shake off the weirdness as I made my way to Dr. Havard through the least busy hallways. There were still zero answers. Just 2 days ago, this place had been abandoned. I shivered as I knocked on Havard's door. Steve, good to see you. Let me get you some tea. Dr. Havard pulled back a seat for me and immediately put a hot cup of tea in my hands. Perplexed as I was, I could not help but notice that he had put me in his own very comfortable desk chair, which had been specifically made to ease the strain on his aching back. Meanwhile, Dr. Havard sat on the ordinary office chair, usually reserved for guests. I could see the reverence in his eyes as well. What was going on? It was a question I found myself asking all too much these past few weeks. I had to try and get my answers. Why have I not heard from you? This place was abandoned just 2 days ago. He nodded thoughtfully. Yes, we were receiving our visions too. Our Lord really did make it all clear, didn't he? Our Lord? I asked him, shivers reaching down my spine. Yes, don't you? He smiled. Forgive me. Our Lord already said that you might still be somewhat shaken and confused from your own revelations. We were not expecting you until tomorrow. You all had those visions too? Those dreams? Everyone here had them? Well, I don't think they were exactly the same. I saw some very personal things, and I'm sure others did too. We rarely talk about them, but I feel that they contain the same message overall. He hesitated, and I looked as if he was trying to muster his courage. Was he afraid of me? Would you mind if I asked about your visions? What? My apologies. I never meant to offend you, he said quickly. It's just that, well, you're his prophet, right? I was dazed. Why me? Why was that thing doing that to all of us? It explained the awe they regarded me with, but left me in the dark otherwise. Suddenly, my head seemed to split in half as I heard a deep, loud voice echoing through it, an imposing voice that could only be described as ancient.
You've finally come. There were times that I doubted if you'd make it, but you've arrived where you belong.
The voice said, and I looked at Dr. Havard, who was looking ecstatic.
You are to be commended. The other focused the brunt of his assault on you, but you didn't fall, and you didn't break. I was wise to choose you as my prophet.
This is unreal. I struggled to speak. What are you?
I am God. Listen and heed my words, prophet. There is a lot to explain.
My best friend sent me a strange note. When I read it and knew what it meant, I felt the need to vomit. And that's exactly what I did. I vomited and tried to finish it. I wish I hadn't read it all, because of what it meant, because of what it would do to me. Dear Peter, there are a lot of things that I want to say, and not enough time to say them all. I wish I had more time with you. How long has it been? 8 years since you left us? I know you said that you wouldn't come back here, and so far you've kept that promise. I hate that I'm going to make you break it, but you need to come back. There's something wrong here, with the island itself. It's sick, Pete. The entire place is dying, and nobody is willing to admit it. They keep sending out flyers and brochures encouraging tourists to snap a picture from that damn canyon, but nobody seems willing to admit something about that place is just wrong. You knew the truth, Peter. I think that's why you left. But you need to come home, please. This place needs you. I needed you. It's too late for me, though. Too late to stop what has happened. So don't do this for me. Do it for everyone else. We need you, Peter. Sorry again for interrupting your life. Macy. I probably reread it 3 times, trying to convince myself that I was wrong about what it implied. But I've known Macy since grade school. This wasn't just a plea for help. This was a letter saying goodbye. I crumpled it up, then pulled up social media to confirm my fears. Macy had drowned the Sunday before. Nobody had bothered to even send me a notice of the funeral. That made sense, though, considering that I hadn't been home in a while. Macy was off by 2 years, I thought. This September marks a full decade since I left the little fishing community of Grey Fork. I debated what to do next. I could have simply ignored her letter, kept living my own life here in Illinois, and not worrying about the life I had back there, but her letter disturbed me because of its contents. The canyon. Most people don't know much about Grey Fork Island, except one key detail that our councilman had promoted like crazy since it happened. A large crater on the south side of the island is claimed to be the site of a UFO crash. Yeah, you heard it right. UFOs, aliens, the whole 9 yards. Our community thrives off of that nonsense, and it's done that for nearly 30 years. My grandfather, when he was alive, said that the impact occurred during the late 1910s. World War I was coming to a close, and most people were so focused on the European scene that a strange event in Midwestern America was small news. According to him, an object was seen by local fishermen off the coast of Grey Fork on the evening of November 13, 1919. It was said to be long and silver and glowed brighter than a star. At a nearby military outpost, General George Aylesbury gave the order to shoot the object down. And that's exactly what happened, Grandpa said. The UFO was struck and crashed on the south side of the island, creating a canyon that is now affectionately called Colton's Crater. Colton Ward was the first person on site to evacuate the canyon before the military swooped in and quarantined everything. Colton claimed he saw two massive gray-skinned creatures emerge from the silver capsule. But then the army pulled him away and covered it all up, or so the story goes. When the public was allowed access to the site again, almost 6 years later, there was no UFO or any evidence to suggest anything had crashed there in the first place. Colton turned it into a tourist attraction, setting up a shop and a photo booth, and even a restaurant. It stayed in business and kept Grey Fork afloat during the Great Depression and World War II. However, in the late 50s, astute miners realized quickly that the site was riddled with radioactive material. And because the contents of the crater were considered so dangerous, the south part of the island became no longer accessible to the public. Decades passed, and no one knew the exact details, but eventually it was decided that the levels of contamination were not considered lethal as long as no one remained at the crater for a long time, and so the tourist trap was reopened, and Grey Fork flourished again. If I was a betting man, I would suggest that palms were greased to get the legislation passed. I've only been around a short 35 years, but I know that money makes the world work. And I also knew that the radioactivity at Colton's Crater had claimed many lives, my father's included. 11 years ago, I saw my mother waste every dime she had trying to prove that his work at the site caused his death. It was for this reason I swore I had to leave and never look back. I couldn't let Dad's death consume me like it had her. Now, 10 years later, another death connected to that damn canyon. This time, I couldn't just turn a blind eye. I checked my schedule and confirmed I had the time to take off for the funeral. Then I booked a ferry to get to Grey Fork. I didn't pack a lot because I wasn't planning to stay for long. I figured a day or two would sort things out, and maybe I could leave before anyone realized I was even there. I guess that was a fantasy, because on the ferry, I had the misfortune to run into an old friend. Philip West, former linebacker for the Grey Fork Guardians, was also coming to the island for the funeral.
Never thought I'd see you here, Pete. I thought you were gone for good.
It's personal. Macy and I were best friends, I said as I looked toward the foggy shores of the small island. It looked so desolate.
Is that what she told you?
Philip said with a mild laugh. Then he showed me a letter that he got from Macy. It was identical to the one I'd received. I took it, trying not to feel surprised, and then looked toward the shore again. Had Macy tricked me to get back on this miserable rock? If that was the case, my stay might be even shorter than I expected. I thought sourly as I passed Philip the note back.
When I got it in the mail, I found the whole thing quite odd. I haven't spoken to her in years. I left Grey Fork to have a better life. And I've had that good life. I got a wife and kids, a nice paying job. This place doesn't even cross my mind. Macy's note was a shock to the system. How did she even find my address? And why was she asking me to come back to this dumb old island to investigate a strange canyon? It makes no sense, honestly.
I hated to admit that I hadn't considered all this before I left home. Philip was coming here to get answers, and I considered asking him if we should work together. But I never did get along with him, and I wasn't planning on making amends now. So I kept my mouth shut as the boat approached the docks, and the air horn announced we were free to leave. As I grabbed my bags, it began to rain, soaking my body as I ran toward the bus stop. Grey Fork only had 2 bus lines 10 years ago, and from the looks of things, not much had changed. I stood there in the storm, debating if I wanted to ride a bus alongside Philip West. Then I saw a man holding a placard with my name on it, standing next to a black Honda SUV. I couldn't help but walk over to them, surprised that anyone would be expecting my arrival. He opened the door to the car, and I found myself staring at the current owner of Colton Canyon, and one of my old girlfriends, Jennifer Ward.
Get in, Pete. We need to talk.
I didn't argue. I was mystified as to how she knew I would be here, but it didn't take long for her to reveal what was going on.
I see that you got Macy's letter. I got one too, by the way. Everyone that knew her did, urging us to come here to Gray Fork and check out what happened in that canyon.
Jen told me as we drove away from the docks. Everyone? How many letters did she send?
Over the years, a lot of people have left this island. I think if I'm counting you, I have found 6 people so far that came back because Macy wrote them a suicide note and begged them to come home.
I said nothing as the storm got worse and we drove towards the old bed and breakfast her family ran. Jen told me that she had a room for me and anyone else that had a note from Macy.
I'm determined to learn the truth about my family's old stomping grounds.
Old? Do you mean the Wards don't have control of the canyon anymore? I asked as we pulled to the side of a building and Jen offered me an umbrella.
My father lost it in a gambling ring 2 years ago. Damn fool. This place was keeping us from going bankrupt. Now the new managers let me stay on as a housekeeper until the debt my father paid is gone. But that isn't your problem, Peter. Just get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow. And maybe all of us can get to the bottom of this.
As I went upstairs to try and relax from my long trip, my mind kept spinning about the strange notes Macy sent. When I first saw it, I had assumed it was a personal plea to make me come to the island and solve the mystery of the canyon. But now, I was beginning to realize that I wasn't as close to her as I thought. Why had she brought so many of her old friends here? And how did it connect to the canyon that the Wards had used as a tourist trap for decades now? As I settled into my room, I looked out the window toward the south end of Gray Fork. The long, thin canyon stretched into complete darkness, like a wound that would never heal. Something strange was happening deep in its crevices, and I needed to figure out what. I didn't believe in extraterrestrial life, but I was convinced this was not a natural phenomenon happening here. Aliens or not, I would find the truth. If not for Macy, then for my own sanity. I told myself for years that Gray Fork was nothing but a bad memory that I needed to run away from. I told myself that my father's death was just his own fault, and that my leaving was for the best. I had to be right about this, or the last 10 years would be for nothing. The funeral home was located near the middle of the island, an old stone structure that probably dated back to colonial times. Jen promised we would talk after the services, but honestly, my mind was on seeing my family there at the church. I hadn't said anything to any of them about my return, so when my mom caught my attention across the pews, I knew that this trip was a mistake. I tried my best to get lost in the crowd, but Mom found me as soon as the service ended.
You have some nerve showing up here.
She shouted at me and pointed a finger straight in my face. She looked terrible and smelled of booze. Lower your voice, I told her as I saw the townspeople give us odd looks.
I don't see why I should. You come here to your friend's funeral, but you didn't even bother to help bury your own father.
Can we go somewhere to talk about this? I pulled her towards the entrance of the church. Philip had heard our exchange and thought he was going to be a gallant knight.
Mrs. Thorne, is Pete bothering you?
Stay out of this, I told him. There were words exchanged that I can't repeat. Then he hit me. My mother stopped the fight from getting worse and told me to come to her house. I had a bloody, broken nose to mend, so I didn't argue. When we got there, she nursed my wound with weary, drunken eyes, seemingly lost between joy and anger to see me again.
You shouldn't have come back here.
I'm starting to realize that, I told her as I took an ice pack to my throbbing head. I told her about the note Macy had sent and the ones others had received. Her face went pale when I mentioned the canyon.
You can't go down there. There's evil in that place. You killed your father.
I wasn't sure I believed her, but I urged her to tell me what had happened 10 years ago. As much as she didn't want to, I convinced her I wouldn't go to the crash site if she told me.
It was a bad winter. Your dad had just lost a job with the lumber company over on the west side of the island. And even though he'd been almost 20 years, it meant nothing to them. Times were tough. The money on Gray Fork was drying up. And the only business that seemed to have stood the test of time was that damn canyon. Howard Ward still owned it back then, and he gladly let your dad come aboard as a supervisor. They needed people willing to take groups deeper into the canyons. Thrill seekers. Everyone was trying to prove that the aliens were there. Bunch of nonsense. I thought, and, well, your dad felt the same. As long as it gave us a way to keep a roof over your head. After those first few weeks of work, though, your dad began to act strangely. He would put in extra shifts trying to find large groups to take into the canyon. He would never explain what exactly they saw down there, but his face told me everything. There are secrets buried in there, Peter. And your dad let it eat him alive. I later found out that a lot of the people that he took on those tours never left the island. Or at least, there's no document of their departure.
She showed me the article that had paperwork from Colton's Canyon. She had been collecting them. For what purpose, I wasn't sure. There were discrepancies, where some of the information didn't match what Dad had put down. It was like they were keeping two sets of books. You're saying these people disappeared in the mine?
Something happened to them. Why is there no record of them leaving Grey Fork?
She asked. I shook my head, not wanting to believe such a tale. There are a lot of people here, Mom. You can't hide this. Not for this long. I told her. She seemed angry that I didn't believe her, and went to her attic to retrieve one final item, a journal that Dad kept, which she claimed held the truth about the caves. I looked through the journal. Most of it was just ramblings and thoughts of Dad trying to figure out more about the canyon.
Reading this showed that he was losing his grip on reality near the end. The guilt of what he did to those people. It killed him.
Sure enough, as I reached the end of the journal, I saw that his ramblings became nothing but gibberish, along with weird drawings that reminded me of what the old tales said aliens looked like. When did you find all this?
5 years back. Took me a lot to get Howard to cough it up. But I think he realized the cave was evil as well. I think he lost the rights to the canyon on purpose. Otherwise, if he had stayed owner, I think he would have eaten a bullet too.
That night, I reviewed Dad's journal, writing down what little I could make sense of. There were charts and geological surveys amid notes relating to the military outpost on the east side of Grey Fork. From what I was reading, Howard Ward had an arrangement with the military to maintain the site and continue the tours despite the dangers of radiation. If this was true, the Army was knowingly sending people down there. But why? What did they hope to accomplish? I knew the answers had to be in the canyon. I gave Jen a call in the morning and asked where her father was these days.
Dad? He's at the local psych ward, Morning View. He lost his marbles after he lost the business.
I thanked Mom for all her help and hurried to the psych ward. I had only days left in Grey Fork, and I was determined to make the most of it by learning what I could about this half-century mystery. My initial speculation was the Army was hiding some kind of experimental weapon down in the cave, but when I met Howard Ward, everything changed. On the drive up to the hospital, I came up with a good lie about why I was there. Jennifer had sent me there, and I was a family lawyer. There were documents that needed to be finalized for the canyon that he had failed to take care of 2 years prior. It was good enough to not raise any eyebrows from the staff, but when Mr. Ward met me in the commons room, he wasn't fooled. "You ain't my family lawyer," he muttered as I closed the door. "You dated my Jenny. I remember you. Before you call your nurse and shove me out the door, you should take a look at this." I gave him Macy's suicide note first, then my dad's journal. "What is this supposed to mean to me?" "Notice anything? The writing here is the same. For almost a decade now, people have thought my father died a madman, and then I thought the same thing about my closest friend. But that was just part of the cover-up, wasn't it, Mr. Ward?" I asked. He diverted his eyes, which told me I was onto something. My mother believed that people being sent to that crash site were being killed. What was really happening to them? "Why don't you go there and find out for yourself?" "I plan to do that next, once I find a way. From what I hear, the new owner has the same sweet deal you had with the Army. You knew that those people were being used for some ghastly exploitation, didn't you?" He shook his head and looked toward the window.
You understand nothing, boy. You think this is the army? You're so small-minded. This is much bigger than anything this planet is ready for. Aliens? You expect me to believe that aliens are behind this? I saw them, Peter. Tall, gray-skinned beings with eyes like fire. They spoke to my very soul, twisted my mind. They controlled me. They've been controlling me all along. They are the ones who brought you back to this island.
My mouth felt dry as he finished speaking. It sounded absurd. What would extraterrestrials want with someone like me, or Philip, or Jen? Why were they gathering us? Tell me the truth, Mr. Ward. Did you kill those people? Instead of responding, he began to smash his head against the wall, and I shouted for the nurse. By the time they arrived, he had fallen unconscious. I quickly gathered what I brought and made a phone call to Jen to meet me near the canyon. I think I have an idea about the canyon. Can you get the others to come?
Everyone except Philip is here. He went to Macy's gravesite.
I told her to meet me around noon and then pulled up alongside the small cemetery. Just as Jen said, Philip was there, looking down at the grave.
What do you want, Pete?
He snapped as soon as he saw me. Jennifer told me you were here. I want to make amends. I lied. I needed him to come to the canyon too, because he had received a letter from Macy. That meant he was connected to all this somehow.
Looks like your mom stitched you up. Guess I went a little too hard,
he said with a shrug. What brings you back here? I asked, gesturing toward the grave.
I think we're all asking that. Jen told me that others got the same letter from Macy. It feels like we've been guided here for a purpose, and I wish I knew why.
Philip admitted. I did my best to not let him know I felt the same, but offered some encouragement to get him on my side. The answers are in that canyon. Jen is getting the others to come there this afternoon. You should come too. I think the only way we can learn what's happening is if we go together. Wes shrugged and nodded, walking to the rental car he got.
I'll come. But if this turns out to be another waste of time, Pete, I'll knock you down again.
As he drove off, I scratched the back of my head and wondered what he meant. What moment in our past did he consider a waste? I checked the time and went to get my things before driving toward the canyon. My hope was to resolve this mystery and be on the evening ferry to the mainland, but that never happened. As I arrived, I saw that the old buildings used for ticket sales and memorabilia looked like they were about to fall apart. The new owner must not be trying to keep it looking fresh, I realized. I saw everyone gathered next to the building. Jen didn't seem amused that we were all summoned here.
What did you call us here for, Pete?
The tour only works if we get a whole group. We go down there together and get the truth. It's that simple. That was another lie. I didn't want to admit it, but ever since I arrived, I had been telling such lies to the people closest to me. I wanted to know what this canyon was hiding, and I was willing to do whatever it took to find out, even if it meant that these people might get hurt in the process. I didn't know for sure we would be safe, but I had to keep pushing forward. The tour guide was an older gentleman, probably not connected to the new owner at all. Much like my father, this was just another clueless local trying to make ends meet. They asked us all for our driver's licenses. They seemed happy to see that all of us were locals. I hadn't really checked to make sure about that, but I found the information odd. So many people have tried to leave Grey Fork over the years, and now something has drawn us back. Howard Ward believed it was extraterrestrial in origin. My mother believed it had something to do with the government. I wasn't sure what to think anymore, as we all boarded a cart and our guide took us into the canyon. Despite the fact that it was a clear day, once we were deep enough, the rock walls prevented any light from shining down here. It occurred to me that even though this place had such an impact on my life, this was my first time coming here. Maybe I always knew it was trouble, I thought. As we drove, the guide mumbled the same old legend that all of us had heard before. Of course, they didn't mention the radiation poisoning that nearly closed this place down for good, but I decided to push my luck and ask, are people still getting sick? Is it really safe to come down here? Why did they close this place for so long? The guide gave me a cold stare as we got toward the deeper parts of the cave, apparently not expecting someone to know about that part of the story.
This place has never done anything like that. It's just bogus rumors. It heals people.
You'll see soon enough." He parked the car and urged us all to follow deeper. The path led underground. All of us were silent as we walked into the cave, and I asked Jen if she had ever come here before.
My dad said I couldn't. He said he didn't want me to wind up like the people he sent down here.
That made my stomach do flips as I asked the others the same thing, and I soon learned none of us had ever been in this canyon before. But all of us grew up here. We knew about this place. So why did we never come? I asked aloud. As if to answer my question, the guide punched a key code into a door in front of us and told us all to enter a very dark, cold room. But I saw something glowing inside. Mesmerized by it, I walked into the room and stared up at what looked like a glowing green stone. It had to be at least the size of a small car. It had markings all across its exterior, but none of them resembled any human language I understood. I couldn't help but feel my heart skip a beat. So it really was aliens this whole time? I asked in amazement. The guide laughed and remarked, "This is just a meteorite, nothing special here, but I'm not surprised you've heard the rumors about the aliens. It's kind of our spill to sell tickets."
What are these markings then?
Philip asked as he tried to reach out and touch the stone. Before he got close, he jolted back.
Feels like the damn thing is on fire.
"Beats me if I know. I just work here," the guide said, and encouraged everyone to take as many pictures as we wanted. "You'll see your equipment doesn't work down here anyway. People enjoy that part of the phenomenon." I pulled Jen and Philip to the side, whispering in their ears, "We need to find a way to go deeper. Something tells me that this guide is only telling us half the story."
Let me see what I can do,
Jen said with a wink and strolled over to the guide to start flirting with him. I was amazed at how she was able to trick him. It was like flipping a switch. "How much time do we have?"
As much as we want, I guess. That old dude didn't know anything, and I'm starting to think there's nothing here.
I suggested we needed to check the rest of the cave and make sure there weren't any secret passageways. This couldn't possibly be all that was hidden here, I thought as we spread out to the crevices of the room. As we looked around, I noticed other markings that matched the glowing stone near the base of the floor. The entire room, as a matter of fact, seemed to be somehow connected in some way. It made me wonder if, when the guide brought us inside, if we had stepped inside something.
There's something here,
Jen said, pointing near some kind of pedestal. It was large enough for her to stand on. As we cleared away other debris, I realized there were more similar items on the floor. Each resembled a standing circle that was big enough to remain perfectly still on. As Jen stepped onto one of them, the stone sunk into the floor and gave off a glow just like the central orb.
There are enough pedestals here that all of us can stand on them. In fact, I think it's the exact number of people in this room,
Philip commented. We took a closer look and determined he was right. Maybe something happens when we step on them all together? I guessed. Immediately, the others wanted to try. I was the last to stand on a pedestal, and as I did it, I immediately felt unsettled. The room was colder and more claustrophobic, darker.
Something is off.
The others were already standing on the pedestals, preventing us from stopping what we had set in motion. The stone in the middle of the room began to glow even brighter, and I felt my body become heavy. And then we started to float.
What the hell is happening?
I'm not sure. Try to push yourself to the door, I told her. As soon as I uttered the words, I saw the door was beginning to shut behind a wall of stone. We were trapped in this room, and it felt like I was beginning to suffocate. The stone began to spin, and its glow blinded my vision. I could feel my skin begin to blister and burn, and cracking across my arms and turning my pigment a dull gray. Just as suddenly as it had begun, we fell back down to the ground, all of us gasping for breath and feeling the need to throw up.
What the hell just happened?
None of us had an answer. I noticed the stone was still spinning. I don't think we are out of the woods just yet. Near where the door had been, I heard voices and saw people that looked like miners entering the cave. My arms felt too heavy to lift, but I tried to get their attention. One of them raised a gun to Philip and ordered him to stand down. I soon realized these were army officers, likely coming to investigate what had happened. I raised my hands over my head, my vision adjusting to the room. That was when I saw Jennifer. Her body was dull and devoid of color, her skin cracked and brittle like rocks. I looked down at my own body and realized the same thing had happened to me. Something in the room had transformed us. The soldiers kept shouting orders as we tried to stand.
Stop! We need your help!
Philip pleaded as one of the officers kicked him back to the ground. It was as though they didn't understand what we were saying. Then they used the blunt end of the rifle and knocked him unconscious. I was next. I found myself struggling to even fight back. The world around me went black before I could even scream. We woke up chained to metal tables. It took me a moment to realize we were no longer in the canyon. I couldn't shout to the others to check to see if they were all right. As I focused on the objects in the room, I saw a calendar near the door. October 1976. That couldn't possibly be accurate, I thought, as I heard voices outside of where they were holding us. The military officials had returned. A man in his late 50s entered the room and noticed I was awake.
Water?
He offered, uncapping a bottle. You've made a mistake. We're civilians. We live here on Grey Fork.
Son, I know exactly who you are. I've been expecting this day for nearly 70 years.
I got a good look at him, trying to figure out if he was bluffing or just insane. You don't look a day over 55, and that would be pushing it. What the hell is going on here? Are you involved in this cover-up at Colton's Canyon?
You ask a lot of questions. Colton's been closed for years now. In fact, we were waiting for your arrival to reopen the place,
he said as he sipped his water and walked toward the next table. The person there thrashed and tried to fight back as the officer took a syringe and plunged it into their chest.
You have no idea what you are, do you, son?
He turned around and showed me the vial of blood he had extracted from them. It gave off the same bright light as the stone in the canyon. I know you're violating our human rights. I have a lawyer back in Illinois.
Your lawyer hadn't even been born yet. You think I'm joking?
The man said and turned to a monitor, flipping it on to show the newscast. This is 1976? You know that we are from the future? Who are you? I felt as though my brain was overwhelmed with this information as he took my blood as well and smiled.
I'm here to make sure you fulfill your destiny.
As he left, I turned to the other person, wishing I could find a way to break our bonds. None of this made any sense, but I was determined to help us escape. A few hours later, masked techs arrived and began to pump drugs into the other prisoners. The army guys stood by watching and wrote reports as the test continued. My friend writhed in pain at first, but then it became so overwhelming that they just laid there and let them do the tests. What are you trying to accomplish? I asked the army officer.
The ADU comes from the year 2023. That's almost 50 years ahead in our time. Yet, you have traveled backwards in time, and your physical body will continue to reverse in the timeline the longer you stay here. Such an ability is remarkable and worth studying. It could easily help the entire human race to fight old age.
So we're just guinea pigs?
70 years ago, you appeared in the canyon like a fire descending from heaven. You nearly lost all sense of humanity, but after we procured your corpses from the UFO, we discovered the truth. Despite your alien exterior, your cellular structure was still human. We have been studying it ever since. I'm living proof that the treatment can work. I should be dead by now, but your blood has kept me alive.
As he finished the sentence, he used the vial of blood on himself, smiling mercilessly as we were poked and prodded.
So yeah, you will be my test subjects for as long as possible. It's for the betterment of mankind, you know?
Something deep inside me became so angry, I started to feel like I did in the cave, my skin blistering and burning. I felt a surge through my limbs as they broke free from the bonds. The tech nearby tried to sedate me, but I subdued them and tried to free the other man alongside me. We need to find the others, I said, my body feeling light as a feather as I searched the outer hallway. The nearby rooms had our friends in them, and as I started to use my newfound strength to force the doors open, I found that some of them hardly even looked human anymore. I stepped into the next experiment chamber where Philip was thrashing around on the floor like an animal. His body was elongated like a snake. His skin stretched beyond measure and his eyes bulged as he struggled to breathe. I realized in that horrible moment where the stories of the gray aliens were coming from. They were turning people just like us into these monsters. I realized as Philip tried to reach out in desperation toward me. I knew I couldn't help him. I sealed the door shut and told the others to make sure we didn't open it.
We're running out of time. We need to find a way out of here,
Jennifer said as she joined us. It looked like the mutations hadn't affected her as greatly, but she was still struggling. Deep scars in her face resembled gills, and I wondered if we would even be able to breathe oxygen again once the transformation was complete. Jennifer saw what had happened to Philip and did her best not to panic, shouting orders to the others as we moved to the second floor of this prison. Just as we got to the top of the steps, I heard the door we had sealed fall apart. It sounded like a bomb going off. Philip was following, and he was angry, screaming and attacking everyone that he got close to. In front of us, soldiers attempted to barricade our escape, and I found myself acting like my friend. Whatever they had done to us gave us extraordinary strength, tossing them aside like rag dolls. As we reached the outside of our prison, I found myself unable to move because of the brilliance of the sun. Jennifer shrieked and fell to the ground, her eyes no longer able to handle the light. The soldiers surrounded us, and I thought for sure our escape was in vain. The officer that had first found us approached me, a smile appearing on his face.
Amazing. You are just like the aliens I met 70 years ago. You're a miracle. The next stage of human evolution.
He ordered us to be taken to the crystal chamber. Despite our effort to fight back, we were escorted into a boat and soon found ourselves transported to Grey Fork, to the canyon. I wondered if I was going insane, and if I wasn't, how long until I would be. I watched the waves of the lake crash against the boat. As we reached the canyon, the soldiers led us through a different passageway. This one was littered with corpses, gray-skinned aliens that looked like they'd become part of the cave wall. Except I understood how these creatures were once human like us, taken from our present, brought here to this cruel place to be experimented on. We've been manipulated since the start, I thought as we were forced into the crystal room again. Despite the fact that we were missing Philip, our bodies began to experience the same symptoms as before. I prayed for unconsciousness. The room around us began to glow and shimmer, and we were again hurled into an unknown space. This one looked much different than before. The cave almost resembled a control room. I stumbled over to one of the monitors to get an idea of where we were, but the readings made no sense. If I was reading it correctly, we were flying above the surface of the earth. An alarm blared near the crystal. Jennifer reached for it with her bony hands and activated a communication device.
Unidentified aircraft. This is General George Aylesbury. Stand down or be fired upon.
No. God, no. I think they're going to shoot us down.
My head was spinning, but I knew what was happening, even as the monitors told us missiles were firing upon us. We had been thrust into the distant past when the UFO first crashed on Grey Fork. Except we were the ones piloting the ship that was about to crash. The ship began to go up in flames as the missile struck us, and I held on to whatever I could. The massive metallic ship hurtling towards the surface. Rocks and glass and debris crashed all around us as we hit. The merciful darkness my only comfort as I became pinned under the rubble. I am not sure how long I stayed there. When I heard voices approach, I saw army officers shooting at my friends, killing them without even realizing they were hurting their fellow man. I found the strength to shout to them, and the officers hesitated when my voice sounded human. They instead stunned me and removed me from the rubble, dragging me to a transport that would take me away from the canyon. As I left the control room that was now buried in the cave, I apologized to Jennifer, hearing her ragged voice beg for death as I was taken away. Approximately 30 minutes later, I was in chains before the same man I had seen in the 70s, except he looked slightly younger.
You speak our language?
He asked, as several of his doctors took samples of my blood. I'm from the future. I am human, like you, I told him weakly.
A human? No, that's not possible. Such a wild claim would require evidence.
I used the only idea I had available and gave him a few details of the coming years, including what would happen here in Greyfork. The general rubbed his chin thoughtfully.
Amazing. Such technology is beyond even our wildest dreams. I'm sorry to say this, but you'll have to stay here and be monitored. We need to know everything we can about this UFO and the powers it gave you.
Should we put him with the other? An officer asked. The general gave a nod, and I was dragged back to the barracks. Once in my cell, I took the time to mourn my friends. Jennifer, Philip, and the others were dead, all because of my actions. I looked across the room and saw another figure there in the shadows. The figure looked familiar, but different. I took a step closer and called out to them. Then I heard a voice I knew I couldn't mistake.
Peter, you got my letter.
Macy? What have they done to you? I said as I saw her mutilated body. We were both no longer the people we had once been.
Nothing that I didn't want to happen. I knew you would be here eventually. It was fate.
Macy said wistfully. The others are dead, Macy, I told her. She didn't seem fazed by this news. Her dark eyes glistened like the stars.
In the time we come from, I went to the canyon like so many had before us. I wanted to learn what secrets it held. And I was thrust into the past, just like you. They tortured me, experimented on me, and did unspeakable things to me that no human should endure. Then it occurred to me that I was no longer human. The stone, the ship, it had changed me. Powers beyond our understanding have manipulated time and space for us to be a part of their plan. And I at least understood why when the stone spoke to me, sending me here to the distant past.
I got closer to her, trying to understand what she was saying. It sounded like madness, but I had already experienced so much that I knew it had to be true. The stone, is that the real alien life form?
It's been altering our body for a purpose. Peter, don't you see it? We are ushering in the next chapter of humanity. Our planet will be forever changed thanks to what they've done to us.
You mean the stone tricked us, sending us back into the past because it knew these soldiers would use us as guinea pigs?
You saw the corpses in the canyon. More fodder for its endless hunger, Peter. We are simply slaves to it now. The soldiers are no different, even if they don't realize it. Their thoughts and actions are all being driven by their greed and desire for power. Power the life form will never give them.
I found myself unable to stand, the overwhelming meaninglessness of my life crushing me as I shook and cried. I had tried so hard to escape Greyfork, but it had always been a part of me. Everyone and everything I ever knew was just a cog in the machine of a power beyond my imagination. Now my only hope was death one day, either at the hands of the soldiers or the alien that had changed my body and made me in its image. How long will we be here, Macy? She didn't say anything for a moment. She had resigned herself to this fate as well.
Forever. I think we're trapped here as long as we live. And even if we die, we become a part of the living ship that altered our bodies. This island, all of this. We are all fuel to its appetite.
I wanted to cry and to laugh, but the only response I really had was anger. That anger led to silence over the years, as the soldiers used us again and again to experiment on themselves, unaware they were being used by the very ship that had crashed so long ago. Eventually, I knew I would become part of the ship too, like so many others. My only passion over the years became writing this account, hiding it from sight and storing it for the future. One day, far from now, perhaps in the time that I come from, someone will find this account and learn the truth about Greyfork. There are aliens here, and we are the monsters that have made this hell.
In 1910, the United States military discovered an extra-dimensional rift in the California desert. At the time, they didn't understand what it was, and naturally, launched expeditions. Few of the explorers survived. Those that did returned as violent men incapable of speech. Each one attacked fellow servicemen and doctors before dying. Dying is perhaps too kind of a word. Their tissues lost structural integrity, leaving these men boneless, grotesque parodies of humanity. Autopsies showed that none of the men had skeletal structures. Rather than bone, they had a rough formation of what turned out to be calcified fungus. When inhaled, this fungus turned formerly brilliant men into mute, violent husks who quickly died. Autopsies once again showed a hardened fungal structure in place of the human skeleton. In 1914, a being of unknown origin peered out of the now heavily guarded rift. We weren't able to stop it. Not only was it utterly immune to human weaponry, the sight of it caused strokes, heart attacks, and in some cases, spontaneous physical mutations in the guards. Fortunately, it didn't stay long. Unfortunately, it returned several times to peek out into our world. Each time had devastating consequences. I don't know how or why the government came to this conclusion, but the document I accessed states that the intruder was a young being that was effectively peeking through a keyhole. When other, greater beings discovered the rift, humanity would be in dire danger. Over the next 4 years, military physicists conducted rounds of experiments with the intent of closing the rift. Instead, they tore another hole into our dimension in 1923. Pretend the walls that separate dimensions are reinforced steel. For about 30 seconds, this physicist transformed the steel wall into a mesh screen, permeable, unsecured, and easily destroyed. Something burst through the screen, an electric tornado covered in stars. The moment it broke through the screen, the rules of our reality forced the being a physical body. Beautiful and hideous at once, the creature somehow defied natural laws while still being beholden to them. It shrank to the size of a rat and grew to the size of an elephant in the span of 5 seconds. It bled white fire and vomited diamonds, but was allergic to milk and silver. Its sweat left verdant greenery in its wake, even on steel walls. Its waste consisted of a fungus that dissolved and replaced the internal structures of a living host, converting mammals to sentient puppets that seemed to function as the eyes and ears of the being. Most spectacularly of all, it physically manipulated the universe. One early account tells of a handler who entered the being's compound and promptly had a stroke, which was not unusual. Early on, the being exerted a range of effects on personnel, ranging from clairvoyance to abrupt physical mutation to injury such as heart attack and stroke. Surveillance footage shows the handler drifting between infancy and old age like a sped-up film. Suddenly, the handler screams,
"They've already come! This is what will come! This is what has come!"
The air behind the handler ripples into a morass of glimmering darkness. Something emerges from it, something bright and starry, hideously beautiful in the way of gods and angels. Those of us who have seen this footage catch only a glimpse of this divine monstrosity before the image cuts to strange, sparkling black. According to the timestamp, it resumes precisely 14 seconds later. All that remains of the handler is a raw, human-shaped pile of bone viscera. Behind him, the being grapples with the glimmering dark slit, pulling it closed the way we might close a pair of curtains. The being succeeds, then collapses beside the handler's remains and grieves. The grieving proved that the being bonded closely with its captors. Though highly intelligent, in fact, immeasurably intelligent by human standards, it bonded to people in a manner similar to that of companion animals. In stark contrast to the being's gentle loyalty, the intruders, the godlike monstrosities even our cameras can't comprehend, were hostile. That incident was the first sighting, but it was far from the last. From that day forward, the monsters, eventually codenamed Sed, attempted to cross into our world on a frequent basis. Our only recourse was the being, who bravely knit the openings closed and, in some cases, injured or even killed the intruding Sed. Before long, too many attempts were being made too frequently for one being to handle indefinitely. The military's solution was a breeding program. After 5 years and hundreds of experiments, the military discovered that the being's offspring had to be carried in human males. They siphoned nutrition using an array of tentacles that they inserted into the intestines and stomach. In several early cases, the hybrid fetus triggered a metamorphosis wherein the father and the fetus combined into a single entity. These hybrids were uniformly male. While they inherited most of the being's more interesting properties, none could knit the universe together. They could, however, accurately predict future events. They were weak, however, prone to fits of grieving over horrible events, and joyous celebration over events that made them happy, some of which were as inconsequential as the birth of kittens. We referred to them as Roa. In other cases, the fetuses ate their way out of the fathers. The cases of cannibalism resulted in violent offspring. We called these cannibalistic offspring Sharam to differentiate them from the Roa and euthanize them all. Until 1994, when a second being was finally born. She tore out of her human father and knit him back together immediately. He still died. After all, closing a wound isn't enough to heal the damage within, but the fact remains that her very first act was an attempt to heal her father. Shortly after her attempt to save her father, the world split open. I've seen the footage from 24 angles. A stark black line cracks the air and grows, morphing into a glimmering obelisk that spans floor to ceiling. A set emerges and we see a glimpse of it, a titan made of stars and teeth and reptilian eyes before the camera goes dark. We waited for the inevitable breakout of the set, but it never came. We finally received permission to investigate. We found the set, paralyzed and half concealed in its portal. The being and its daughter stood before it, feverishly attempting to knit the portal closed. This was the first indication we had that the being couldn't actually be tracked. It had deigned to let us imprison it, but could escape whenever it wanted. I didn't have time to ponder this for long. However, I caught a glimpse of the set. Its skin pulsated under the lights, blinding snakes of mercury writhing around rivers of oil-slick black and banner-like undulations that reminded me of the aurora borealis. Eyes blinked at me, alien and fearless and full of a blank, impersonal rage. Nauseous vertigo overtook me, and I spun around and faced the wall, struggling to ignore the maddening harmonic chime of the universe closing up again. The sound echoed through me, making my bones vibrate and my blood cells sing. "What happened?" I asked. The being can speak, but it cannot speak to us. Only a few have heard the voice of the being. The few that didn't die of stroke ended up unable to hear anything but echoes of the being's voice, which drove them to suicide. So, after several decades, the being communicated by manipulating matter in a way I can only describe as puppet shows. Rough approximations of people and places and things that told a story the being thought we could understand. This particular puppet show showed a cannibalistic fetus, the Sharam, eating its way out of its father's back. It crawled out and grew until it was a man with starry skin and eyes like the sun. A rocket came and bore it away to another planet. It looked up, roaring as the air around it shuddered and exploded into 1,000 glimmering holes. Seds flooded from these holes. The starry man killed them, rending these incomprehensible gods limb from limb. Then he fell to his knees and consumed them all. The image evaporated into smoke, which writhed until it formed the first written message ever delivered by the being. Sharam killed the Sed, but you kill the Sharam. The Sed shuddered and its mouth opened. A hallucinatory, multicolored darkness flooded from its jaws and spilled through the room like a tsunami. I found myself hurtling through the darkness like a scrap of paper in a riptide, like paper in water. I was dissolving. I could feel it, my bones rubberizing and my tissue stretching thin, pulling apart into thin, inconsequential tatters. Then hands plunged into my ruined form, warm and small and terribly painful. The next thing I knew, I was on my back in the birthing chamber. That pain intensified, overtaking all of my senses. I sat up, looking for the source, and screamed. My legs were flayed piles of viscera in which grayish, hole-filled bone gleamed. That is the last image I have. My bare bones coated in gore before waking in a hospital. I'll be honest, I didn't expect to wake up. The kind of knowledge with which I've been entrusted exacts a terrible price. I wasn't entirely wrong. They only kept me alive because the being had bonded so closely to me, and they felt like I might be able to coax it back to US territory. You see, after rescuing me and knitting the rift, the being and its daughter, who researchers named Shara, fled. Remember, we weren't exactly capable of imprisoning the being. It just allowed us to do it out of its boundless, incomprehensible devotion to its handlers. We don't know why it fled, although researchers believe it's because the being somehow realized we were killing the Sharam. Perhaps the being had parental feelings towards them. Perhaps it was simply heartbroken that we were slaughtering our own protectors. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the being left us. It came back 2 years later without Ashera and immediately asked for me. I was brought in. Military specialists told me to obtain the following information: what the said were and how to stop them. If I failed, I would be killed. I expected to die. Hundreds of personnel over several decades had failed to extract this information from the being. Why would I be the one to succeed? Even though I was terrified, my reunion with the being was strangely wonderful. It grieved over my injuries and our sustained separation, and then lay at my side. We luxuriated in each other's presence for many hours. Then, smoky tendrils shimmered into being and formed the words: "The said finally understand they cannot open your earth while my children live. Instead, they will open your sky." Where do they come from? I asked. What are they? You will not understand. I believed this, but understanding wasn't my prerogative. Survival was. Tell me anyway. The being hid its face and began to tremble. You will hate me. I could never hate you. I did not come to love you. I am not meant to love you. I only love you because your reality makes it so. What do you mean? I asked. They are the rest of me. The being was right. I didn't understand. Neither did anyone else. No one ever would. The being never communicated again. In December 2015, U.S. intelligence confirmed that Ashera was at a secure compound in Russia's far north. Russia quickly developed its own, rather more successful breeding program. They keep Sharam but euthanize Roa. Funny how that worked out. 6 weeks ago, the Roa all broke into hysteria. They wept and screamed for hours, throwing themselves against walls. Several perished. Finally, we obtained the information that was distressing them so. We have opened the stars. The next day, a Sed attacked a Russian nursery full of Sharam. As the being predicted, it came from the sky, from outer space. The being immediately portaled to the Sharam and fought to the death. Its sacrifice was not in vain. It immobilized the Sed long enough for the Sharam to eat and kill it. The being quickly decomposed into a small mountain of flowers and fungus. Over the following days, Roa became even more hysterical, throwing a sustained fit of maddened despair centered around one piece of information. We are one. We have come. We are one. We have come. The Roa then killed each other. They suffocated and strangled and beat one another to death in a course of 2 minutes. According to our intelligence, all of the Russian Sharam died last week following an episode of mass psychosis. Autopsies revealed that all of their skeletons had been replaced with a hardened, calcified fungus. The people who performed the autopsy died in similar circumstances, mindlessly violent with fungus in place of bones. As of yesterday, the Russian compound appears abandoned, a dark fungal mass choked with flowers, a curiously beautiful blight on the Siberian tundra. We found Ashera. She is prepared to die for us. She's half human after all. This is her world. She'll close rifts on Earth and in space until it kills her. She doesn't know what the being truly was. No one does. If it was meant to be our enemy, why did it give us Sharam to kill it, Roa to reveal it, and Ashera to save us? No one even knows what the Set are. We only know that they are opening our skies. Contrary to released information, the government's been in space for quite a long time. Naturally, we're launching attacks against the Set. Without Sharam, I don't think we have a chance, but Ashera is willing to try. The government is willing to send her into space to close the rifts, and it's willing to put soldiers in spacecraft to bomb the Set to death. It sounds ridiculous, putting a demigod on a rocket ship. The worst part is, even if it works, there's nothing to do about the fungus. The being was right. I don't understand. I don't think anybody ever will.